Hello world, good morning, namaste, Nisam Bulavinaka from Sydney, Australia. I am Sashi Singh and welcome once again to Sashi Singh's Talking Point on this Sunday morning here in Sydney, Australia. In episode 37 this week, we will shortly meet our chief guest, our returning guest, Mr. Mick Beddoes, former opposition leader in the Fiji Parliament, well-known Fiji personality, politician, entrepreneur, facilitator, and a member of the Unity Fiji Party. We'll continue our discussions from where we left off last week. We will discuss with our chief guest how he thinks, with a simple change of attitude, Fiji can move towards long-lasting, peaceful, harmonious, progressive, and a prosperous community. We'll dissect the so-called 9 years of boom, discuss the Chapter 10 immunity clauses in the 2013 Constitution, talk about what he says is the curse of the coups, what his projections are for elections 2022, and what Mick Beddoes terms the democracy of sin, and why it is time to break these shackles and set ourselves free. All that plus a whole lot more with our chief guest, Mr. Mick Beddoes, in just a short while from now. I hope wherever you are on this Sunday or Saturday in the US, you are well settled in to enjoy what promises to be a captivating, enlightening, and engaging interview with my chief guest. As always, one kere I request that as we go right around the world, if you can, please share this SSTP page with your family and friends. Share and like the page if you can. Really appreciate it if you can do that. Welcome to the Thinking People's program, Sashi Singh's Talking Point, live on Facebook and on YouTube. Our regular contributor, Nikhil Singh, will not be able to join us today as he has some major work commitments. Good luck, Nikhil, with your work commitments. Well, as they say, the show must go on. So it is now time to unpack the week from a political viewpoint, and as always, we start with news from Fiji. Fiji Village has reported that the supervisor of elections, Mohammed Saneem, confirms that he has referred the People's Alliance provisional candidate Sajal Narain, the People's Alliance, and Rock the Vote to FICAC, following the receipt of a letter from the Fiji First highlighting various alleged breaches of the Electoral Act 2014 by different candidates. Saneem said the Fiji First filed a 19-page complaint with the FEO in which it highlighted practices of some individuals during the campaign period directly from their own Facebook pages, and such practices are a prima facie breach of the Electoral Act. He said while they are obtaining further information from other persons and political parties named in the complaint, the instances where they found that the law has been breached, they have referred the persons to FICAC without delay. Meanwhile, in response to the actions of the Fijian Elections Office in referring them to FICAC, People's Alliance Deputy Leader Manoa Kamikamides says the party is shocked and angry at the unjust persecution by the Fiji First Party, which has led to the People's Alliance being referred to FICAC without it being given a chance to respond to allegations labeled against the party. Kamikamides says at around 6 p.m. on Tuesday, Fiji First General Secretary Ayaz Sayed Qayyum made serious allegations and defamatory statements at a press conference in the FFP office, which hadn't been provided to them by the complainant, despite Qayyum telling the media the People's Alliance was copied in the complaint. Kamikamides says Sayed Qayyum's claim to have copied letters of these allegations to Sitiveni Rambuka, Sajal Narain, Lyndon Tambuya, Liliana Warid, Daniel Lobendan, Cecil Brown, Philimon Vosarongo, Keninda Queen Raketi, and Ajay Bhai Amrit is an outright lie. He says no such 19-page letter was directly received by any executive or cited by any member of the People's Alliance that evening or even the following morning. Kamikamida says instead they have had to endure anxiety and confusion as they waited for a copy of these allegations. Even then, they were swiftly referred to FICAC without the simple due process of seeking a response from them as a party. The deputy leader of People's Alliance says they will not be cowed by fear when they have done nothing wrong, except to be on the receiving end of blatant political thuggery. The National Federation Party leader, Professor Biman Prasad, is reported in the Fiji Times as saying that Prime Minister Vorengimbani Marama was right to describe the Fiji First Party as wolves. But he said a People's Alliance NFP government would act as shepherds when it came to power after the elections by being fair and compassionate to everyone in Fiji. In an interview on New Zealand-based Radio Tarana, Mr. Mbani Marama compared Fiji First with opposition parties as wolves who do not lose sleep over the opinions of sheep. The PM is right, Professor Prasad said, because that is exactly what the Fiji First Party is, an animal that can only survive by destroying others. That is Fiji First Party politics. It does not bring people together. It does not act in a kind, caring, and compassionate manner. It uses all the powers of the government to target its opponents to rule by fear. Professor Prasad said, if the PM thinks that those who support the opposition are sheep, we will meet that need. We will, when the People's Alliance NFP government comes to power, accept the role of shepherds. We will look after everyone and be fair and compassionate to everyone. All the people have to do now is to kick the wolves out of the door, said Professor Prasad. The Fiji Labour Party has made several commitments that will put job security, fair play, and the fundamental rights of civil servants front and centre. FLP leader Mahendra Chaudhry pledged on the party's Facebook page that an FLP government will move the retirement age to 60, abolish short-term contracts to restore job security, restore appeal rights on promotions, disciplinary penalties and transfers, fully restore trade union rights of civil service workers and their unions, and that Labour will commission a pay review exercise to correct anomalies in the civil service. Chaudhry said under the Mbani Marama regime, the civil service has been politicized, where career civil servants had been replaced by political appointees, and a number of them recruited from overseas. The National Federation Party has told Fiji Village that the use of hard drugs in Fiji has spiraled out of control and was a far bigger disaster than climate change that this government keeps preaching about both in Fiji and abroad. NFP President Pio Tikunduandua highlighted the party's concerns following an online news article posted on September 15th by Vice World News titled, Meth is turning Fiji from a tropical paradise into a narcos playground. In the article, the author claimed he was able to purchase meth in an informal settlement located 5 minutes from the Suva city for US $400 or Fijian $909 a gram. The author also claimed drug-associated domestic violence in Fiji had increased. Mr. Tikunduandua claimed the Fiji First government and police were paying lip service to the fight against the importation and manufacture of methamphetamine. In response, Fiji police disagrees that the drug issue has spiraled out of control. Closer to home, a Fijian man has been charged with murder in Australia in what has been described as a brazen assassination in the streets of Sydney. Samuel John Rokomangiza was charged for the alleged execution-style murder of gangland figure Bilal Hamzi, who was shot down on a hail of bullets in Sydney CBD last year. Today is a breakthrough, New South Wales Police Detective Superintendent Danny Doherty said at a news conference, and we will keep an eye on that story as it develops. And The Guardian Australia reports that a diplomatic row between Australia and Russia appears to be brewing as the federal government revealed it is considering expelling the Russian ambassador as a result of President Putin's nuclear aggression towards Ukraine, as the coalition opposition parties step up calls for further sanctions over the invasion. Russian President Putin said in a national address last week that he was prepared to use all means to defend the territorial integrity of the Russian occupied lands and their people. Australian Foreign Affairs Minister Penny Wong said Australia is considering sending further military assistance to Kiev in the face of Russia's escalating rhetoric, but security and logistical issues were complicating factors. That is the summary of the news on SSTP. You are watching Sashi Singh's Talking Point on Facebook and on YouTube Live. We ask the questions that Fijians all over the world want answers to. As I say, Fijians want to know. Please like and follow the SSTP page if you have not done so. I have an important announcement to share with our viewers before we join our chief guest. Sashi Singh's Talking Point, SSTP recognizes that questioning, constructive arguments, and opinions are part of conversation, but posts with aggressive personal attacks, profanity, name-calling, swearing, defamatory in nature, and/or threatening will be removed immediately, and offenders will be blocked from being a part of the SSTP program. Let's all observe these rules and enjoy the program. Well, now it's time to meet our chief guest on SSTP as we continue from where we left off last week. Mr. Mick Beddoes, as I said, is a former opposition leader in the Fiji Parliament, a well-known Fiji personality, politician, entrepreneur, facilitator, and a member of the Unity Fiji Party. It is a very good morning from Sydney and a very good afternoon to you, Mr. Mick Beddoes, in Fiji. Hello, Mick. Welcome back to SSTP.
Thank you. Afternoon, Sashi, and it's nice to be back.
Well, it's a pleasure having you back. Last week, we unpacked a few of those items that you had referred to. Let us start off immediately. We've got a big show ahead of us, many subjects to discuss. Let me start by asking you bluntly, do you think we as a society show a lack of appreciation and gratitude with regards to the real value of the contribution that our Indigenous first citizens, the Itoke, make towards the $3 billion tourism industry?
Yes, I honestly believe that, and I think that is part of the problem that we have, because it's I guess the point I'm trying to make, it's just been taken for granted. They're there, that's their lifestyle, that's the way they live, and people carry on with their lives. What they don't realize is that what people don't realize is it's precisely the culture, the traditions, and the friendliness and the way of life of our Indigenous people that is the magic formula for the success and growth of Fiji's tourism industry. And countless reports and countless polls of visiting tourists say the same thing. I think last week I referred to it as from when I first started in the industry back in 1970, the Indigenous people, the Fijian people, were the main reason why tourists came here. 2019, there's another survey, and there's been multiple surveys throughout all these years, 4 decades of it. And the result is the same. The reason why people come to this country is because of the family-friendly Fijian people. So what I'm getting at here is this now. Our Indigenous people's way of life, I explained that as well last week, you know, the vanua, the church, the goli, the land, this is their value. This is what, and their family, that's important to them. And whereas in our case, we got to go and strive and work for 40 years and make enough money and build a family, educate your family, and then retire. And as I've always said to people asking me, especially during my years in tourism, our indigenous people are lucky because their actual lifestyle is as if they're in a retirement mode all that time, because that's just the nature of their culture. There are some successful individual indigenous Fijians in business. The provincial councils are major owners of Fijian Holdings, one of the biggest investment companies in the country. So it's not that they are not able to do that. They are able to do it. But I'm talking about the entity, which is tourism, which accounts for about, I think, 45% of our gross domestic product. And that's 3 billion a year. And the tourists are coming here. The attraction is not the beaches. It's not the hotels. It's not the convention centers. It's the people. So what's the value? There's a value in everything commercial. We don't place a value on it. All right, that's one side of it. The other part of it is that it so happens that the indigenous people are the best sevens players in the world, Bana. And every time they run on a field in a competition anywhere in the world, 120 million people get to view this, over 100 countries. And that's confirmed in official reports from the HSBC sevens people. So that is surely putting Fiji on the international map on an ongoing basis. And only, a week or so ago, they were crowned the 2022 Sevens World Champs again. And our sevens ladies, seven women's team, they're now coming up in terms of being on top of the game internationally. So that's a marketing side of it, that kind of promotional coverage. I mean, the tourism, Fiji, the tourism industry, the government can't afford to pay for that on a commercial basis. And yet those boys attract that kind of publicity every time they run on the field. So my point is this, that has a value. So does the fact that our people's culture and tradition is an attraction. Now, why would we not want to protect that? Because here's the other side of the coin, and this is my point. If they are forced out of their current lifestyle to become part of the thrust and thrust of commercial realities out where we are in that area of activity, and they have to go, and they can, they're not incapable of doing, of course they are capable of doing, but we run the risk of creating an exodus from the way of life that is the key attraction that brings 800,000 tourists a year to Fiji, who drop $3 billion while they're at it, which all the other communities, including indigenous Fijian, have that opportunity to create their businesses and flourish and build the nation as they do that. So there's a need for us to appreciate the value of what our indigenous people are for us. And it's not just because they're nice, lovely people. No, the fact of the matter is their culture and their tradition has got a value. And everything commercial, there's a value. If a top sportsman, we also had Vijay Singh as the top golfer in the world. Now, every time he's a golfer, individual, but still world champion. And Krishna is now in soccer. We have individuals who are also out there. Every time they appear anywhere in a function or something, they must get appearance fees, surely. And I've done enough events during my time to know that when you're bringing in a top sporting a personality to grace your function or whatever, you got to pay them a fee. So what fee do we pay our indigenous people? And the reason for me raising this is the irony is we have our indigenous people who are the key to our success in tourism and a key to the marketing of our country worldwide, own 89% of the land, are 62% of our population, and yet they are 75% of the absolute poor in this country. There is something dreadfully wrong with that formula. And that's my point. And It's not for our indigenous people to be standing up all the time and talking about what's the need for them to change, etc. It's incumbent on us, members of all the other communities, the heads of all the churches, for us to stand up for our indigenous people and demand that they be recognized and that there be some form of compensation given to them. Because what happens is this: because the government has been shortchanging the provincial councils for the last 15 years, the province then goes and puts the pressure on the indigenous households in the village to make up for the shortfall, so they can create the development in their provinces and in their villages. And it's like a vicious cycle. And when you look at the amount of money they get in return for their land leases, it is outrageous. It's
All
less
right.
than minimum wage.
Well, you mentioned land leases. Let me pick up on that. But just before that, talking about the real value of the contribution of our indigenous Ethokes, our citizens, you've said that the people should stand up and demand. But is it not also a responsibility of the government to ensure that they protect these marketing gems that we have? Our Sevens team, as you say, millions of people watch that. 800,000 people come into Fiji in a year, and they spend $3 billion when they come in through whatever means that money comes in. Shouldn't the government be
Airline
playing a
accommodation, meals, yeah.
yes? Shouldn't the government be playing a very proactive role? I mean, why would people need to demand this? This is marketing gem handed to them on a golden platter.
Well, you're right there. You're not wrong. But that's assuming you have a government that was initially by choice. The government we have was imposed on us through an act of treason. So this is a government that is born out of act of treason. So we don't expect people who commit treason to be able to be suddenly thinking about the interest of all the people. No, they have self-interest, and self-enrichment is the key for their success. And in terms of the government's involvement with the indigenous people, it is my personal opinion that we have far too much government controlling what the Fijian people do, the indigenous people. And we should, as quickly as possible, remove government totally from having anything to do with it. And because the reason I say this, it is not unreasonable, not just the indigenous Fijians, but all citizens of Fiji, to expect the government of the day to take care of their interests. It's not
Okay.
unreasonable. That's why you elect us, right? But in this case, we have this government. It also uses this for manipulative purposes. They contain, control, manipulate, and divide. I mean, that's what they're doing. They're suppressing our indigenous people. And the reason I'm saying this particular government, well, no other government has imposed 17 to 23 decrees targeting the indigenous people themselves. No other government has ever done this since independence. Only this one. And it's still the law today. So expecting a government with that kind of history to take care of the interest of the indigenous people is a little far, no, it doesn't work. If we go back to civilian rule and we have a transparent, accountable government, yes, you can expect it to take care of the people first.
All right. We will later on in this program look at certain policies of the government, and also I'll get you to provide me your views on some of the, I guess, methodology, some of the things that this government has got up to. But I will pick up now on what you said in your opening statement. You mentioned leases. You wrote an article, and that article was another example of the unfair financial burden our landowners carry through low lease income for the use of their resources. I found that very, very interesting, and I also found it quite alarming. Because you talk of disparities in the way government handles the issue of leases. Now, may I please ask you if you could provide some live examples that you can share with our viewers in line with what you mentioned about the disparity in lease payments?
Well, they don't give too much information. You can go and search for it. It's very hard to get it. But for example, there's a breakdown that I posted about the variations of leases, and you know that there's residential lease, there's commercial lease, there's industrial lease, there's also lease for government and other purposes. Now, of course, as it will be, depending on what the lease is, it will affect the actual lease income for the indigenous landowners. And
What about,
therefore, the
sorry,
lowest
Mick?
of that,
Yeah.
I would imagine, would, yeah?
Sorry, Mick. Sorry to interrupt you. That example I was referring to in your article, you gave a very profound example in relation to the Vaturu Dam. Would you
Oh,
have
that
that?
one. Okay.
Yeah, because that to me, that was a shocking example, and I'd like you to share that if you could, please, because that shows the
Sure.
disparities. That shows the total disparity. Please share that if you could.
Okay, and thanks for that. And before I talk about it, I want to acknowledge Sailosi Lendua, was a friend of mine, and he was the other person I was working with in relation to looking at issues affecting landowners and their income. In particular, the Vaturu Dam area was a project that he was sharing with me, and that's where I got the information from. And unfortunately, following COVID, he and I's communication sort of stopped a little. And when I did follow up to get in touch with him, I found that he had passed on. So
Oh,
I wanted to say that the information I'm giving you actually is a result of all the work that Sailosi, my friend, had done. But in terms of, I'll just go down to the summary at the end here, because the Vaturu Dam issue, and this is something that Sailosi was trying to get sorted out. There is all the land that they had that they used from the landowners in Vaturu Dam. Right now, where we go, I just read this because this is important. Now, there are 4 leases in Vaturu Dam. 2 leases were signed in 1979, in 2001, and in 2001, and the 4th was in 2002. All of these leases are for 99 years. One was for the Vaturu Dam site, and it involved an area of 340 acres, hectares, sorry, that's 840 acres. And the other annual lease was $14,262, or $16.98 per acre per annum. The other was for the Vaturu Dam and Quarters site, and this was for 22.2 hectares or 55 acres. The lease was $4,500 per annum or $81.82 per acre per annum. The third lease was for the water catchment purposes, for which a goodwill payment of $500,000 was paid for the 3,660 hectares, which is 9,044 acres. The annual lease was $57,051, and this includes the $500,000 amortized over the 99-year lease. Now that comes to $6.31 per acre per year. And the 4th lease was for the lease purposes, and it was 237.7 hectares or 587.37 acres. The annual lease was $14,262 or $24.29. Now, the Vaturu Dam supplies water to the whole of the Nandi area and about 70% of Lautoka, servicing 45,000 homes plus, or about 193,500 citizens. Over the 10 years, from 2012 to 2021-22, a total of 721.5 million was allocated to Water Authority of Fiji for operating grants and transfers, and 1.1 billion for capital grants and transfers. The landowners received $795.9 thousand, which represents less than 4% of the Water Authority spend. So the average annual lease for the 10,500 acres involved in Waturu is $90,075 per annum. And that comes to $8.56 per acre per annum, or 16 cents an acre per week. And there are at least 4 different land owning units. Now, the base national poverty line, as I keep alluding to, is $41.91 per adult per week. This means our Waturu landowners' lease income, and that's the lease income for the landowners. That doesn't go to the individual members of the Matangali. But that means the Waturu landowners' income is $41.75 or 99.62% below the current base poverty line. That's and that's the point again I keep harping on. The return that our landowners get is nonsense. It can't be allowed to continue.
You call it nonsense. It's absolutely goddamn pathetic. It is an insult. You just mentioned, and I think we just had a little internet glitch, but I picked it up. You mentioned that over the last 10 years, a total of $721.5 million was allocated to the Water Authority of Fiji. And yet, what was the payment to the landowners, Mick, in that time? Was it $700,000?
795. So say $796,000.
Say $800,000. I mean, how is this just and fair? This is just. So what needs to be done? What needs to be done for the landowners?
See, it comes back to my point.
Yeah.
For our last piece, what I'm trying to say, we need to appreciate. See, what happens is this. The government, the spin, which is the Govers promoted spin, is you will note whenever they're going to make an announcement, it's the big tag, 150 million here, 200 million here, 40 million here. But I break it down to the per person per week. And when you bring it down to that, you realize that money, because it's the total number of people involved. And that money is like peanuts. It's not even peanuts. I pay $3 and I get a decent return of roasted peanuts every now and then. That's good value. They're getting nothing. And it's land, by the way. It's not any other kind of commodity. It's land. It's the land that then is used to catch the water, to provide water to all the citizens of Fiji. And who's giving that? The indigenous people. And so do we realize and appreciate this? I don't think so. I don't think it's intentional. I just say that people just carry on. But they're forgetting about our indigenous people. We have to fix this problem.
Why is it that mainstream media in Fiji do not talk about these subjects? I mean, this is just absolutely, it's an abhorrent state of affairs, if I may say so.
You may. And I've got other words to describe it, like I say, but I can't say it on this program. But really, when I've been into this subject about our indigenous people for some years now, and it's a serious worry because if it's left unattended, this is, I mean, what do people do when their backs are to the wall? What would you expect people to do? There'll come a time. And are we so silly that we, like ostriches, we're sticking our head in the sand and we're ignoring what is right there before us? And we have to realize that we have to change it. And that was the point of my article on the chance for lasting peace. We have to recognize the contribution that our indigenous people give for the country. And you and I talked about it last time.
Yes,
As a kid growing up in all the different places, you're walking to school or come back from school and you pass a village, the doors open, hey, Maikana, Maikana. They don't have much there, but they'll share it with you. They'll give it with you.
absolutely.
And these people, we need to make sure that they're getting a fair return for their asset in the same way you or I would do. We would try and strike a deal so we got the best return. And that's not wrong, nothing wrong with that. But we're applying it to everybody else. But the landowners are not getting a fair return. And why? Because of government control. So they're managing the affairs of our indigenous community, which is why they have no say in what they're earning. And that has to stop.
Okay, now you've mentioned lasting peace a couple of times in the last few minutes. Let us look at what needs to be done to change things. You have said that a simple change in our attitude will ensure that moving forward, our attitude in life will be long lasting, peaceful, harmonious, progressive, and prosperous, and that it comes down to an act of kindness. I love what you say, Mick, but what did you mean by this statement in reality?
Well, you know that the history of that goes back to June 7th, 1940, when all the Matangalis in Fiji supported the call by the Great Council of Chiefs in response to a proposal by Ratu Salala Skuna, and to try and accommodate the need of other communities, primarily the Indian community who was settling in Fiji at the time, so that they can have access to land, so that others can access their land and then and develop. And that's that's the time that they created the NLTB Act. That's what they did, and they transferred all of their land. Just imagine that. All of their land, their asset, into the NLTB for it to manage it on their behalf. Right? They did that. That was 82 years ago. They did that. And the governor at the time did say that this was the greatest act of trust and faith in colonial history. He obviously would have been stunned by the fact that they were prepared to do that. But that's the very nature of the people who are our host community, who I refer to always as our first citizens, because they are. And of course, so they've done that, and people have used the land. The land has been used all this time. People have flourished, they have done well, and been successful. And they have done all that. And that's, it could have been very different. It could have gone another way. They could have refused. They could have done any of those things. But the reality is they didn't. And yet, today, they are 75% of the poorest, the absolute poor in the country. They own the land. And yet, they're getting returns that are, as we just talked about in Waturu, that is ridiculous. It's criminal. So no wonder they are 75% of those living in absolute poverty in Fiji. This is not a formula we want to continue. So we need to change it. And the way we can do that is this. First of all, I call on all other communities to take whatever prejudice glasses or binoculars that we have been viewing our indigenous community with, put it in the rubbish bin, and look at it from the point of view that I'm trying to look at it. And they need a fair return for their asset, just like anybody else will. And start to support a move towards making sure that our landowners get a fair return. Now, if they got a fair return, their incomes will go up. If their incomes will go up, the need, they would move out of being part of the absolute poor. And what I'm trying to say, it will start to change. And they, because they account for 75% of the absolute poor in Fiji, if you raise their standard of living up, and you will do also for the other communities, the minority communities, theirs will also go up accordingly. We will then take care of a huge chunk of those living in absolute poverty and start to lift their income level up to the point where they can live a good life. And by the way, even the imposed constitution provides for everybody's constitutional right to a decent housing, to a good living, to economic benefits. And yet here we have a majority indigenous people struggling with virtual, it's not even, it's meat dust, what we're giving them.
You know, the disparity that we've just spoken about, using that Vathuru Dam lease example,
Mm.
and you'd appreciate this. You're a businessman. You're an entrepreneur. You'd appreciate this, that in any commercial transaction, it's handled in commercial terms. In other words, if the market value of properties in Nandi, for example, is at a premium, and yet in Tavua it is not, well, Nandi will command the base price of the real estate market in Fiji. It's the market forces that determine the price factor. Similarly, why is it not that we can apply market forces dealing in commercial terms with indigenous land, with commercial transactions like leases to the Water Authority of Fiji? I mean, I just find this absolutely mind-boggling that perhaps even the Minister for Indigenous Affairs cannot target his vision towards this cause.
Well,
Your views. Your views.
you're 100% correct. I agree with you. And that's the problem. And that comes back to my reference to the fact that far too much government control is exercised on our indigenous community and their institutions. And that must be absolutely removed. Because clearly we have seen, certainly in the last 15 years, that it's not always a government that would look kindly and try to make sure that our host community actually flourishes and does well. I mean, that's the reality of what we're dealing with. And another point I want to make, on the commercial terms you're talking about, you can go and get a lease of land, native land, right? Even if it's an acre. You lease an acre of land. What is that? What will the price be? Let's just assume it's $800 or $400 a year. Say it's an acre. That's probably on the high side even. But if you just take $400 as a lease, you take that title of that 1 acre land, and then you go and get a value on it. Let's say the value comes back saying, oh, okay, well, if it's residential or if it's depending on it, that 1 acre, I would say, is worth about $40,000, $50,000, $60,000. So you may be paying $800. You suddenly got an asset worth $60,000 to $70,000. Now then, if you went along and got it subdivided into 4 quarter-acre lots, and then sold each of those for $60,000, which is not far-fetched, that's $240,000. And then if you went and put homes on them, built homes on them, went to the bank, got a loan because you now have a high-value item, you get a loan and progressively put 4 homes in it, and then you rent it out. I did an exercise before. And the lessee could earn up to about $1.7 million by the time the 99-year lease was up. And in that same period of time, the landowner would have received, I think, was $5,600 over 99 years.
Wow.
So that's the level of disparity, that it is criminal actually, and we have to change it.
All right. It brings me to another subject along the same lines. You had stated that 82 years after opening their land to others, our indigenous community account for, and you said this last week, I believe, 192,977 of the 258,053 citizens living in absolute poverty, which is 74.8% of our absolute poor. Our Indian community account for 22.8%, or 58,933 members, while our minority community accounts for 2.4%, or 6,143 members who are struggling in absolute poverty. My question, Mick, is to what do you attribute these highly disproportionate figures, especially when you look at our indigenous community, round about, say, 75%, and then when you look at our Indian community, say 23%. Why this disproportionate figures?
Well, I guess it's as we were discussing in the earlier on the earlier topic, it's about the unfair distribution of the nation's wealth. That's all. It's not fairly distributed. Not everybody has the same opportunities. Now, in the case of the indigenous Fijians, they should be doing better than anybody with all the land they have. If you had the land that they have, you would surely be a billionaire by now. If you had it all to deal with, of course you would. You would make all the money in the world out of it. But yet, they still, 82 years on, 82 years after giving their land to be administered on their behalf for the benefit of all the people, they're paying a price today. And they're among the absolute poor. And in the Indian community and minority community, the issue is different. They don't own land. They don't have necessarily the kind of asset that our indigenous people have. And so we have to handle them in a different way to lift them up out of their predicament and bring them into a place where they're more productive and they're able to get on with their own lives and build a good life for themselves. And they need the same kind of things that a lot of our poor need. They need decent homes. They need to have good incomes, decent incomes, not outrageous incomes, but a good wage. And they need to be able to have good facilities. And they need to be able to have a job. And these are the things we have to target. Now, the indigenous people, they're in a different, what shall I say? They're in a different zone, because theirs is a pretty fundamental one where they can be out of where they are if they were getting a fair return for the use of their land, and they are not. And as a consequence, we now have this many people who are actually poor in a country that has less than 1 million people in our population, with so much land that we shouldn't have a single person in this country in desperate need or to find it difficult to put food on their plate every day. And the disparity, I mean, is obvious. You would have, I think we mentioned briefly the point that 19,100 Fiji citizens have more than $500 million sitting in Australia. I mean, wow. And here we have 522,000 Matagali members who are receiving income that is below the base poverty line. There is something wrong with that formula, and we cannot allow it to continue. We must change it.
Mick, in any language and under any government's watch, a figure of 74.8% of one ethnicity living in absolute poverty would be a sad indictment on their governance. What role has the current government played insofar as the 74.8% of the indigenous community living in absolute poor is concerned?
Well, I am looking for it and I can't find it. And I looked very hard. And it comes back to their spending priorities. And it's pretty clear what their spending priority is. And they're spending it so that they look good to the voting public. And I believe, frankly, part of the strategy is to leave as many of our people in such a desperate state that they become so desperate. If they're going to hand out the $1 a day, that's going to be such a big relief to them that they won't be upset about it. And it is sad, and it's a very sad state of affairs that we're confronted with. So all I'm trying to say is this government has done very little. And for all the boasting about $147 million in social welfare, Ministry of Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation, as I was alluding to last week, you break the figures down, and virtually all of them, at the end of the day, the recipients receive less than the base minimum poverty line of $41.91, which is why I keep saying this government perpetuates poverty in the country. And then when you want to go then and compare that with their salaries that they're earning every week, it is quite shameful.
A thought just occurred to me, and after last week's program, Mick, you revealed some startling figures last week. Over the period of a week, have you been challenged from any quarters at all about the figures that you've mentioned? I know you did mention that your figures have come from the budget estimates, but from the powers that be, has anyone given you a call? Has anyone challenged you at all? Just as a matter of interest?
No, and look, I don't expect them to. Well, I mean, they're going to look rather silly because if they want to challenge me, and I'm going to say, yeah, okay, take me to the page and the line number and wherever did you think, because I have all that with me anyway. And it's their figures. It's the only difference is they talk about the big ticket item. They talk about the spin. 140 million here, 50 million here, 20 million there. I talk about the individual person who receives it and what it ends up being in their hand in a week and in a day, because that's where the bulk of our people are. They hand to mouth. That's what they're doing, trying to survive. And in many cases, they're reducing the number of meals they have from 3 to 2 because they can't afford it. So no, as far as anybody coming to, I mean, they'll probably have to jack up another excuse or another reason to come at me, and fair enough. I'll have to face that when the time comes. But the bottom line is no. And if they're challenging me and whatever they want to do to me, well, they're doing it to themselves because it's their information.
Appreciate that. Now, how do you react when the Prime Minister says that the well being of all Fijians is government's main priority, especially in light of, and as we discussed last week, the failed promise to allocate the $10 million to fund the Ethoke development of their land, the $35.2 million of taxpayers' money that was paid for the Fiji International Golf Tournament, the $16.7 million paid out and lost for the Super 15's annual rugby clash, the $172.5 million and more paid out for leased vehicles since 2015. All this costing $224 million, which people could easily say is reckless spending. And as you know, Mick, that money could have gone towards helping tens of thousands who are in desperate need today. What do you say? How do you react to the PM statement?
Well, it is plain BS. It's either that, or it can also mean that he's been given that statement to make, and he hasn't, taken the time to call somebody in and tell them, show me where this is, where you're getting this information from. Now, if he just is going to go out there and read that statement because they gave it to him, then clearly, he doesn't realize it. But what he's saying is it does not gel with what the figures show. Their own budgets and their actual spending, as per their published budgets and estimates, is where I get the figures from. That's what actually is spent by them over that period of time. And then all you have to do then is just to quickly add to it the number of people that it's meant to go to, and there's your answer. It's as clear as daylight. That they know they talk. They don't talk or walk the talk. They talk, all right. So I think it's a lot more of, do as we say, but not as we do. Because these guys, there's no relativity to what comes out of the mouth to what is actually spent. There is absolutely none.
Sad state of affairs, I was going to say, and I maintain that. It's very unfortunate, and I'm not saying this out of any egotistical want. It's a sad. It is sad that this program can't be transcribed into the vernacular and distributed, because the sorts of figures that you're talking about, the issues that you're talking about, indigenous landowners, the lease monies, etc., it just belies belief that people at the ground level, they don't know all of this. It's kept away from them. Mick, have a sip of water, have a break. Viewers, you are watching, as you know, Sashi Singh's Talking Point, and my chief guest today is Mr. Mick Beddoes, former opposition leader in the Fiji Parliament and well-known Fiji personality, politician, entrepreneur, facilitator, and member of the Unity Fiji Party. Please like and share the SSTP page on your own timelines so that as many people as possible can be part of today's interview. So far, Mick, what you've shared with our viewers is a story of doom and gloom, especially when it comes to issues like people living in absolute poverty, the disproportionate lease payments, as we've been discussing in the last few minutes. Surely there must be some good news on the horizon. Let me explore this next topic with you. Fiji's Minister for Economy, Kayum, has proclaimed that there have been 9 years of consecutive growth, 9 years of boom. Truth or fiction? And which 9 years would he be talking about, Mick?
It is. I can say fiction, but he's not incorrect by saying 9 years of I wouldn't say boom, but 9 years of consecutive growth, if he didn't cherry pick. So I'm saying that he cherry picks the period of time. And let me just tell you right now, they were in government from 2007. So if you go from 2007 and you count the first 9 years, there's actually 2 years where there's negative growth. So it can't be. He's actually he's referring to 2010 up to 2018. That's what he's referring to. All right. And basically those are the years where they've had positive growth numbers. That's it. But they've missed out 2007, 2008, which is 1% growth, and 2009. In 2007 was a negative, and 2009 was a negative. So there are 2 years of negative growth prior to the 2010 period. So he's cherry picked the period, and of course he stops short of 2019, where there was a negative result as well, and that's before COVID. So we can't take COVID and use that, because that was That was a national absolute pandemic. So it had a lot to do with that rather than anything else. So the bottom line is his average growth rate was actually for the 9 years is 3.72%, the highest level of growth that his government has got was 5.4. The lowest is 1.4%. 9 consecutive years where the growth rate was above 6%. So it's not boom. It's laced with bull, and the lacing of the 9 years is with a bit of bull, because he's not doing straight 9-year calculation. He's picking the 9 years where he's had growth and ignoring the other years. So what, were they there or not there, or were they absent? How do we deal with that?
Mick, you did say bull, B-U-L-L, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, the reason I spelled it out is because when you were making some very specific points, internet started playing up and your words didn't come out as clearly.
Yes.
So instead of boom, we're
Oh, okay.
talking, you're saying that it's laced with bull, B-U-L-L.
That's right.
All
And
right.
it's, it's a result of cherry picking. It's a
Well,
result of cherry picking. You're picking the years that are good and ignoring the other side.
well, you made a starting revelation that 2019, pre-COVID, it was actually in deficit, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The growth.
By
The growth was
0.
yeah,
Yeah, it was negative.
negative. That's right. All right. Well, maybe at this juncture, why don't we look at the best performing administrations briefly from 2007 to 21? What can you share with us when we look at the performance from the first Mara administration to the Bainimarama administration? I've read your article. You've summed it up very nicely. For the benefit of our viewers, I'd like you to briefly, please provide a brief look at each administration only in terms of the average annual growth and best year and percentage growth in that year. So let's begin. The Mara administration from 1970 to 1987.
Yeah. So the average growth rate was 4.35%. The best growth was 12.7%. And he had 10 years where the growth rate was above 6%. That's the first Mara administration. And then when you go to the second Mara administration, the average was 3.52%. And he had 2 years, 2 of those years above 6%. He had 2. Then we go to the Rambuka period from 1993 to 1997. Now, he didn't have any year where it was above 6%, and the average overall was 2.27% average growth rate. We had the 1 year with Mr. Chaudhary, and that year was an 8.8% growth. And I will not count the 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, the step in PMs. But Mr. Garris's term, which was from 2002 to 2006, he averaged 2.35%, but did not have any growth rate above the 6%. And so there you have it. Now, if we then look at the total of the Bainimarama government term from when they've been to 2021, the average growth is 3.23%. And there's only and I look back again, and there are no years. There's no year where they've exceeded 6%. So without a doubt, Ratu Mara still has the best record.
All right, those figures make for very, very interesting reading. So at the end of the discussion on this segment here, what do we conclude from the figures? Still no boom?
Definitely no boom. And again, I mean, it lends itself. Right? It's just this desperation to try and be all things to all people, to be good, to be the best at this, and when they really are not, they're not that good at all. They think they are, and I think they try at it. They do a good job. They keep going on about it often enough, and if people don't say anything or do anything, then that becomes what people think. That they are as good as they say. But you'll notice one thing: they're the only ones promoting how good they are. No,
Yes.
no one else outside is actually saying it. They themselves are.
Mirror,
So yeah,
mirror on the wall.
start to think about the person. Okay, self promotion, self promotion. Keep talking about how wonderful they are, but nobody else is saying. Just they are
Yeah,
saying.
it's like mirror, mirror on the wall, isn't it? All right, Mick. Now, you said that you found it condescending and arrogant, the delivery the Minister for Economy referred to in his $1 a day booster payment for our children, pensioners, and social welfare recipients as, and I quote, this is what he said, and I quote, the bump that makes a difference. It can mean the difference between a fish head and a full fish. It can be the difference between a full chicken or a soup pack. It is the difference between fresh fruit or no fruit at all. It is the difference between nutrition or unhealthy snacks, and that, Mr. Speaker, is a difference that matters. End of quote. Now, under the present climate, the first word that comes to my mind is insensitivity. However, that is just what came to my mind. Why did you find the minister's fish head and full fish statement condescending and arrogant? Please explain.
Well, it was also patronizing, and here it's all very well for the minister to talk like that. Look, $1 a day is good enough for you. He's telling the people that $1 a day is good enough for you. Well, yeah, that's of course because his parliamentary salary is $285,000 a year. What have I got it down here on the weekly one? Uh, yeah, $4,361 a week. Of course, he can talk like that. What if he were the one receiving the $1 a day? What would he think about a guy called Qayyum standing up in the house and telling the speaker, $1 a day is good enough? How degrading can he be? And this is it. They stand up in the parliament, and from day one, they lecture everybody. They don't speak to people, they lecture people. They can't, they have never been able to, have not once sat as a parliament, because, in the days that we were in parliament, we were different sides. We had different parties, different interests. So we were there. But at the end of the day, we all understood one thing. The one reason we're there is to represent the people. And if that meant going and talking to the other side and getting things done, that's what we did. Because the beneficiaries of our effort would be the people. But here we have this side just lecturing to the other side and mainly to the audience. And at the same time, the person who's telling that the speaker that $1 a day is the difference between a fish head, a full head, or empty head. I think the thinking by the person who feels that is like the fish when we were kids in Lambasa, we used to go and catch the salala. The person who thinks like that is themselves salala. There's, what I'm trying to say. It's an empty head. If you think that it's $1 a day is okay for one of our citizens to have, and you're earning $623 a day.
Wow.
I mean, that's arrogance in the extreme.
And
And
just compare that to the base poverty line, the national base poverty line. How much is that per day?
Oh yeah,
Five,
it's hang on.
is it 5.99?
Yeah, you got it right.
Yeah.
Yeah, 5.99 a day is the base poverty line, and the minister telling the speaker that $1 a day is okay for somebody to have because that can give you a fish head or something else or empty one, and he's earning $623 a day. Of course, he can afford to lecture like that. But even if you have that, you see, there's no humility, there's no respect. He's not showing any respect for the people, the citizens, no humility. He's just trying to show off. What for? I don't know. Who he's trying to impress, I have no idea. But he doesn't impress too many people. And he's getting $623 a day. And so he can stand up there in Parliament and tell the speaker that $1 a day is okay. It makes a difference in somebody's life. So how about we take his salary away and have him earn $1 a day and see what he thinks? How about what would his view of life be?
Taking the base national poverty line, which we've just said, $5.99 a day, and
Mhm,
the 23,817 recipients of the minister's poverty benefit scheme, and his
mhm,
2022-2023 budget allocation, where each recipient receives $3.92 a day.
mhm.
How does it equate to what the PM gets per day? What the AG, you've just said he earns $600 a day, what the other four cabinet ministers and other ministers get. I mean, this would be atrocious figures, I bet you.
Well, yeah. Look, the
The, P,
PM.
the PM's
I,
per diem, the PM's per diem itself is incredible.
yeah. Well, I mean, we can't. We don't want to add that because we know he gets it when he goes overseas. I think that comes to around about $3,000 a day. And just for your information, that's more than the Prime Minister of Australia and New Zealand get. Okay, and
Yes,
in Fiji
absolutely.
we haven't got 1 million people, but our Prime Minister gets that. But anyway, the PM gets $814.73 a day. The AG, $623.11 a day. Now they've split the cabinet ministers up, and I guess it's a favored four, and they're on the favored four according to this. I brought this along. Their salary is 200,000. So in their case, $549 a day, and the
Okay.
other ministers, $185,000 a year. And that's just the salary, by the way. We're not talking any of the allowances or anything else. And the other ministers are 518, and even the assistant ministers getting $322.80 a day.
So the question is, Mick,
And of course, they can.
who get? Hmm, sorry, go on.
No, that's I finished. Yeah,
All right. So the question is then,
yeah,
who gets to eat the whole fish every day if they choose to do so?
yeah. They can all put a big whole melon on their plates and enjoy that for as long as it would take. And at the same time, they think that it's okay for somebody to receive $1. And they believe, as the minister says in the Parliament of Fiji, that that is what will make the difference to their lives. How arrogant, condescending, and patronizing one can be is beyond me.
How should the general public, and most importantly, the tens of thousands of poor and disadvantaged citizens struggling with poverty, react to the minister's gesture of $1 a day?
Um, Under normal circumstances, they should be absolutely bloody angry. But again, um, we have been suppressed. We have the threat that hangs over the entire country, and these guys operate on the basis, and we're, like I say, we're not a democracy. we're a parliamentary dictatorship because they still pretty much run the show left, right, and center. So the people's reaction, I'm not surprised, is muted simply because there's fear. They live in fear, and there's no way to live. There's no way for anybody to live, and that's why they're not reacting. And I always say when I meet people who ask, well, it's only this much. I said, listen, the government's job is to take care of your welfare. Take the money that they're giving you. It's not good enough. It is peanuts, but it will help you, so you take it. And then I tell them, but don't think for 1 second that obliges you to go and vote for them. Do you want to keep getting $1 a day? Then you'll vote for them and you'll get $1 a day. If you want it to change, then for goodness sake, when you go and vote in a totally new government and get rid of these people. That's all. And show your anger in the booth on election day. Tell them how angry you are by your vote, and no one will know how you voted. So you have nothing to fear. You just go in there and you tick, and you vote them out. Do not tick for anybody who's standing for that party, the government of the day, because they haven't looked after you in the last 15 years. I can guarantee you it's not going to change if you put them in for another 4 years. And you, in the meantime, will continue to be treated with disrespect as the Attorney General and Economy Minister himself did when telling the Speaker that it makes a difference when our people get $1 a day. Wow. When you want more of that, then you'll vote for them. And I'm telling everybody, don't be so stupid and don't be so silly and don't worry about fear. No one knows who you're voting for. Go in and vote them out.
Well, it's people's God-given right to exercise their so-called democratic rights in choosing who they want as their representative in government. Mick, after Aman Ravindra Singh's decision to leave Fiji became common knowledge in Fiji, you penned an article, "The Fiji First Monty Python Theatre of Absurd Continues." If I may ask you, what prompted you to write that article?
Well, as you probably know, Aman is a good friend of mine. And of course, I was communicating with him in the lead up to his case. And I want to tell you, when I was in looking after the opposition office for Rotemumu, and I was working with the late Lofitu Melani. Anyway, she got a call from Ra to say that there's a busload of Ra citizens being rounded up and taken to appear in the Lautoka court in regards to some sedition claim that was being made at the time. And they had no representation. So she asked me what we're going to do about it. So I immediately rang Aman, and he was in court in Nadi. And I said, listen, bro, I really need you to get somebody down to that courthouse. When this bus arrives, you need to go and advise those people properly about what they should or should not be talking about, because the first thing they'll do is try and get everybody to say whatever without reading them their rights. And it's important that you do that. And Aman took care of that. And not only did he take care of that, he then fought the case for those people all the time. And I always respected him for just stepping out there and doing that. And that's what he does all the time. So obviously, when he had his case on, I kept in touch with him because I was concerned about it. And then, of course, when it happened, I had in my mind, I was going to wait until the case was over because you're not supposed to comment on a case that's actually currently before the courts, which is the normal thing, and that's fair enough. So I waited. And then, of course, he had made his move. And then I decided then that after he'd after I knew he was gone, and I did eventually speak to him, and my concern was for him, his family, make sure are they okay, and everything was all right, and then I wrote this.
Okay. You said Monty Python Theatre of Absurd continues. What's the absurdity?
Well, the absurdity is that here we have the people, some of the original players, and I know Qayyum joined in 2007, was probably not direct, it was not involved in 2006. And so from 2007, but here we are, either the players, the active participants in the 2006 coup, or aiders, abettors, or enablers in this group. And here we have them making comments, derogatory comments, and calling out somebody like Aman, saying things like, he was, what did they say about him? I think I saw somewhere that he was a coward to go off or take off or something else. And I'm trying to say, these are the very people who committed treason. This is what I call the dysfunctional society that we have. And here they are, they're governing, and they're actually are the caretakers of the law in the land. And somehow or another, and you look at it, people think, okay, they will dispense with the law fairly. No, they won't. They don't understand what fair is. If they did understand what fair and what right and what was just, they wouldn't have done what they did in 2006. And that's what I mean. It's a damn circus if it were not so serious. And that's what I refer to as the absurdity. It's a Monty Python, because Monty Python, they take the mickey out of everything that happens. And, you can have a big laugh of it, but these things are not a laughing matter. And of course, of all people, the person who's making the statement was himself a subject to claims and in investigations, which, again, coincidentally or whatever else you might say about it, his case was done and dusted. I mean, there's no case to answer. But we've had people who have borne witness to this fact. And so, and here he is condemning and saying Aman should have stayed and faced the music and all this nonsense. And I say, who are they? And none of them, as I said, not one of them can walk in Aman's shoes. None of them will ever be able to. So I think that's why I call it the Monty Python theater of the absurd. And they're the ones that committed treason. They're the ones that were part of 3 coups. They did their part, but they cost the country, according to one Nasi's estimates, $9 billion.
Yes.
And destroyed thousands of lives. And then here they are lecturing someone like Aman and making these derogatory comments about it.
This is a good place for me to now address with you. Let's look at Chapter 10 of the 2013 Constitution that deals with the immunity clauses. Do they really give a damn about anyone else other themselves when one dissects the immunity granted to these people? The perpetrators of coups, for example, all covered under the Chapter 10 immunity clause. Your views?
Well, the short answer I have is no, and I believe that is part of Fiji's problem, because essentially, not only do we reward the wrongdoers, we protect them, entrench that protection in the Constitution. And we give them irrevocable, absolute immunity from prosecution for their crimes. All right? That's what the immunity says. Both in the, where was it? The 1990, the first immunity provision in 1990 Constitution, covering the 1987 coup. And then it's in the 2013 Constitution and covering the 2006 coup. And yet, in the middle, we had a 2000 coup. And for some strange reason, George Speight and company are not covered by immunity. So this part of the dysfunctionality of our idea about what is just and what is right, so that we have 3 people commit treason, but only one pays the price and is in jail today for that. And the other 2 don't pay anything. And so they are free to not only contest and go into the very parliament they overthrew and destroyed, but even persecute the former ministers who they replaced. Sent Mr. Garasir to jail on some frivolous thing 19 years before he even became prime minister, when the claim was that during his term as prime minister, he was corrupt and they couldn't find anything. So they went back 19 years, I believe. I could be corrected on the time, but something as simple as not declaring his interest. Well, that was around about the time that we had affirmative action for indigenous Fijians to try and narrow the gap, the economic gap. So, you know, he was working for his village or his Vanua, and that nothing wrong with that. So what I'm trying to say is we have this immunity, which is not only entrenched, and by the way, the whole reason they trashed and burnt the Yashgai 2012 draft constitution was because no such provision was in it. That's why.
Well said.
Yeah. And Yashgai may not remember, but we, all the political leaders, when he came, and he was going back. He had come, had his meeting with Qayyum, and was ready to go back to pack his bags and come and start the 2012 constitutional committee and get that moving. So he had discussions with all the political leaders. I was the last one. So I met him at the Holiday Inn prior to his departure from Fiji. And his wife, his good wife, was with him. And of course, pretty short discussion. But he said, hey, Mick, I'm ready to go. I've decided I'll do this, etc., etc. So any last thoughts or suggestions? And I said, well, while you're packing your bags, see if it's possible that you can acquire another set of eyes in the back of your head. And he looked at me, he thought I was only joking. And I said, and I'm not joking, because I'm telling you now, they want to use your name, your credibility, your international standing. So they want to lure everybody into thinking that got somebody like Yashgai, these guys are serious. And I told him they're going to use you and then they will abuse you. I don't know if his wife was too amused with what I said, but he left. And then when he came back, and sure as night follows day, that's exactly what happened. And he called me the day that the prime minister called him up and threatened to, and swore at him and threatened to deport him from Fiji, etc. He called me, and I had to call all the other political leaders in Suva to ask them, hey, somebody call up, go and see Yashgai to just, just be with him, give him a bit of support. And so that's why the 2013 Constitution came in. And we did tell him. We were suspicious that there does exist a draft of sorts, and it will only come through if what he's going to write is not good enough. So in that immunity provision that they put in on Chapter 10, right, which includes both the 1987, 2006, is the clause that I think people should be really angry about. And this is where you see the self-interest come. And it says that no citizen can claim for any compensation if they have lost property, they have been hurt, anything has happened to them, anything that has gone as a consequence of the coups, and it caused you to lose everything, and a lot of people lost everything. You cannot claim a dime. But the people who caused it can go on and have a free life and be happy-go-lucky. And this is what I refer to as the curse. This is what we are cursed with. We have this kind of a situation, and it's in the Constitution. We put in the Constitution. And what kind of message does that send to any other potential, get rich quick coup enthusiast? Because that they'll say, oh, well, I can do the same thing. I'll do another coup, bring in my team, take over, and put the new constitution in, and away we go. So it's never ending, which is
You've
why
answered,
I
actually,
say we need to get back to.
it's
I've answered
a
the
bit
next question.
concerning.
Sorry.
No, it's a bit concerning because some critical points that you make at that very same time, there's interference with the internet, and your words just get eaten up. But you seem to have answered my next question because talking about that particular immunity clause in Chapter 10 of the 2013 Constitution, I was going to ask you about the allegations leveled against the man himself, against the Attorney General. Now, as you know, the AG has been alleged to be involved in two bombing attacks on political rivals in Suva in the aftermath of the 87 military coups that installed Major General Sitiveni Rambuka's caretaker government, and who again, the AG, 19 years later, teamed up with 2006 coup leader Bainimarama just 34 days after Bainimarama committed treason. So no wonder Yashgai's constitution was burnt and a new constitution brought in with this immunity clause. Now, what does that say about the courage and moral integrity, Mick, of the likes of Mr. Bainimarama, Kayum, and their co-conspirators to subject themselves to the due process of law?
Well, like I say, they hide behind immunity. They lecture everybody. They impose. Look at these ridiculous fines with the election office. $10,000, $50,000, 5 years imprisonment. They're handing out all these sentences. I mean, I've never known more harsh sentences come about in Fiji than from these people who committed treason and who are hiding, who are afraid to front up to a court of law where they expect every other citizen to front up to a court of law and account for your actions. And they don't have to. So they also create two standards. One is the people who are subject to the law, that's you and me, that's all of us. And the other one is those who are above the law. And that's those who are protected by immunity. Right? And somehow that's okay. We're okay. No, that's part of the dysfunctionality. And that's what I say, that's why we're so screwed up in our thinking. And people, no longer, they don't know. They forgot about the difference, what is right, what is wrong. And we've got these kinds of things in place. And you have just gone off the air. Oh,
No,
there
no,
you go
I
again.
haven't gone off air. In fact, I think there's a lot of intermittent fluctuations happening
It must be
with
my
your
fault,
internet
is it?
feed. Yeah, well, let's pursue this. If not, we might have to just relog. But let's continue. Mick, very quickly, I wonder how many of the Fijian population know about the Chapter 11 clause in the Constitution. Very briefly, if you could just advise or rather mention that, please.
Yeah, well, again, in Chapter 11, it deals with amendments to the Constitution. And, they have done it in such a way, they've structured it in such a way that trying to amend the Constitution is almost near impossible. And that's to enable them to stay for as long as they can. And that's why they've done this Constitution in this way. So that trying to amend a Constitution is actually almost impossible, because you've got to get 2/3 of the majority of the members of the House, and so on and so forth. And so, in my way of thinking, that, well, okay, there's always, more than one way to skin a cat, they say. And we don't have to amend the Constitution, for example. We can create totally different new laws that,
Yes.
totally different new laws, and then build up those laws to ultimately achieve the same aim without upsetting the Constitution. But then, if the people are able to get the courage and decide to make a change and come out in mass and vote those people out, vote them out of power, then we can have the numbers to make actual amendments to the Constitution. Or we can create the provision of referendums properly, and then constitute referendums, and then let the people support a change to amend the Constitution. And stuff like that. And let us get the international legal opinion as well as our local, and try to find ways in which we can change this. Because let's not forget, this Constitution has still not been ratified by the people. It remains imposed.
All right. Mick, in that article, you asked a very pertinent question, and that was, and we leave them in charge of the country as custodians of our law and order? What is wrong with us? That's what you ask. Pray do tell us, what is wrong with us?
Again, I guess that's my question. What is it's like you get robbed. Somebody robs your house, beats you up, beats your wife up or your children or something, and then later on, you then this, and he becomes a security guard, and then you give him the keys for your house, and you say, "Look, can you take care of my house, make sure everything is safe?" That's what we're doing. I mean, they usurped our democracy, and then they're the ones that now suddenly the experts in law and order and what is right and what is just, and they're telling us, but it's their version. Now they may pretend to be all of those things, but it does not alter what they are inside, and that is what we're dealing with. And that's why I'm saying to us as the people, we have to look in the mirror, and when the person looks back at us, we've got to ask ourselves, what the hell is wrong with us that we allow this situation to carry on? That's what it amounts to. And we have to change it, and no one else is going to make the change other than the voters, the people, when the time comes. Now, if you want to keep getting your $1 for your fish head, you vote Fiji First back in, and you got guaranteed another 4 years of that. And because these guys know that our people, most of our people are so desperate, they'll take anything. And then they'll feel obliged to the government for having given it. And the government goes around, this is what they're doing now, using government costs, government vehicles to go and launch all these projects. If you look at the last 2 elections, that's precisely what they did. They have lots of things ready during the 4 years, and they build it up, and then they wait for the election year. So Frank goes around cutting ribbons and putting his name on plaques on everything that's structured in Fiji. And that's what they do. And it's all backed up one after another. Pretty much like that Nauvoo hospital that they opened up in a hurry and then still trying to fix it years later. But it was a big thing, big ceremony. And that's all designed to make them look good to the eyes of the people. And the people have to wake up and stop being so gullible. and then call them out on it, and separate the bullshit from the reality. And the reality they know about, because guess what? It's what they're receiving in their pockets every week. That's the reality.
Mick,
And if they want to change it, they can. Just go quietly to the vote and give your vote, and your vote has to be to change totally away from this.
Mick, with all due respect to you, I am going to take you out of the program. The link that I
Can
sent
you hear
you.
me? Or
Yeah, but we're having interference,
the
Mick.
signal's gone?
So what I'm going to do is we'll log you out. You've got the link to the studio. I'd like you to come back into the studio again and let's try. Hopefully, when you log out and come back in again, we won't have all that interference. So if you can just hit that button, leave studio, and we'll wait for you to come back, and you can just log back straight in. Please do that, Mick. We'll take you out from our end, but make sure you log back in. Thank you. You are watching Sashi Singh's Talking Point, and our chief guest today is Mr. Mick Beddoes, former opposition leader in the Fiji Parliament and well known Fiji personality, politician, entrepreneur, facilitator, and member of the Unity Fiji Party. Please like and share the SSTP page on your own timelines so that as many people as possible can be part of today's interview. Let me also remind all our new followers and viewers that you are watching episode 37 of SSTP. If you'd like to watch any of the previous 36 episodes, simply go to the SSTP page, scroll down, and you'll be able to watch all the episodes from episode 1 to this particular episode after it finishes. Don't forget, you can also access all the episodes on YouTube. Simply type Sashi Singh's Talking Point in the search bar, and bingo, you'll have all the programs at your fingertips. We're just waiting for Mick to join us again. And in the meanwhile, um, some of the viewers are just quite taken aback as to the state of affairs, the figures that's been released by Mick last week and this week. And I appreciate your comments. Keep those comments coming. Hopefully, in the next day or two, I'll attend to those comments. And in the meanwhile, I'm still waiting for Mick Beddoes. And we normally don't have issues with the internet connectivity from Fiji, but there are sometimes occasions when these things happen. Some of the viewers are talking about conspiracy theories. Let's not go there. And we normally have a free flow program. I'm just waiting for Mick to quickly come back in again. And let's just wait for a few more moments. Someone has said, Sekope has said, this interview must be hitting a soft spot in some people's weak pumping heart who are listening. Well, don't give up your day job, Sekope, but that made me laugh. I'm sure it's brought a laugh or two around the viewership. Also, don't forget that there is a time change coming through, and that time change is going to happen next week. I believe in New Zealand it has happened already. I received a message from Rock Vinavalevu. You sent me a message. Daylight saving in New Zealand has started, and they've gone an hour ahead. For us here in Sydney, the eastern states of Australia, daylight saving comes into effect next Sunday. So when we come back on air live at 11 o'clock on Sunday morning, it will be 12 noon in Fiji. So Fiji viewers will start at 12 noon next Sunday. It'll be 1 p.m. in New Zealand, and it's going to be 5 p.m. on Saturday afternoon in Los Angeles and San Francisco. I hope you can figure out your own times. And the best thing to do is to follow SSTP. So soon as we go live, you'll have instant notifications that we are live on air. Mick Beddoes has still not joined us, and I'm just waiting for that. And if you have any particular question, Chen, I remember that from the FBC days, says go back to a commercial break. And Chen, of course, this is a commercial break where I've got to keep talking, and I don't have the luxury of putting adverts into those machines we used to have in the studios in those days. So if you have any questions, keep them coming, and I'll try my very best. Maybe I'm just going to hand my phone and see if I can get Mick on the line and try and organize that. If you can just call, please, and just ask him to log back uh, the same codes that we had. Thank you. Maureen Anthony writes, "Thank you, Sashi, for this information. Yes, indeed, that's the daylight saving change coming next week." And as I said, Sydney siders, Melbourne people, will start as usual at 11 o'clock. In Fiji, it will be 12 noon. So, an early start for our Fiji viewers. Join me while you're having lunch and listen to what's happening in your country, things that affect all Fijians. And in New Zealand, our friends in New Zealand, it will be 1 p.m. And to our viewers in the USA, in California, it's going to be 5 p.m. on Saturday afternoon. Check your own times. There's a number of things that we still need to discuss with Mick. I want to talk to him about the curse of the coups and also about his projections for the 2022 election outcomes. And uh, he wrote an article called "Separating the facts from the rhetoric from the facts." So we shall be talking to Mick about all of that. And the gentleman is back. Let's get him back on the line first, and let's continue with the program. Mick, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now, Mick? Hello, Mick. Can you hear me? Mick, you are back. We are live. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
All right.
He's still kind of fading in and out a bit, but we've repositioned the. Yeah, yes,
All right. Well, I can hear you.
yes, I can.
Well, let's continue. Thank you for logging back in again, and I apologize for any inconvenience.
Yes,
Right.
can
So
you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Are you able to hear me? I can hear you.
Loud and clear, Mick. There seems to be a bit of a delay, so I'll ask the question, and I'll wait for you to come back with the answer. And
I can hear you, but you're still fading in and out, unfortunately. So,
all right, well, let me continue. Let's see how we go. You wrote in an article titled "Election 2022, the choice is ours, for we reap what we sow."
are you able to hear me?
Yes, Mick, I can.
Okay,
But can you hear me? Can you hear me, Mick?
okay,
Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me.
good.
All right.
So you had a question. I didn't hear that question. Um,
Right. It seems we have something
yes,
like a. Okay. It seems that we have something like a 5 or a 7 second delay right now. So I'll ask the question and hopefully it comes through loud and clear. You also wrote in an article titled Election 2022, The Choice is Ours for What We Reap, What We Sow, about the curse of the coups. Our first coup was in 1987, then in 2000, and then in 2006. And that is
Yes,
35 years since our
yes,
first coup. What do you mean when you
but there
speak
is
of the
definitely a delay.
what do you mean when you speak of the curse of the coups? All right, we'll have to log out and log back in again. He's dropped out. Vince, if you could assist us as soon as you see him back. And yes, Blossom Roman, you're right. It has gone worse. The connectivity has gone worse than what it was. And so we'll try. And as I said, there is no commercial break here. I can't switch back to another platform. I'll just have to keep on going. And I hope you can just bear with us and wait because there's a number of very interesting things to discuss with Mick. And Orisi Vangilamba, thank you very much, says this program is very informative. I sincerely appreciate that. Um, Victoria Bessamino says it is clear but slow in coming. We can hear you both clearly, but a little delayed. Yes, I sense there was a delay of some 5 or 6 or 7 seconds. It becomes a bit disconcerting, but we continue. Lela Levu, Nisa Mbulavinaka says, thank you, gentlemen, loud and clear from San Francisco, California. All right, let's see if we got Mick back again. Mick, hopefully you can hear me this time.
Okay. Yes, yes, I can.
All right. Okay, let's begin again. You also wrote in an article titled Election 2022, The Choice is Ours for We Reap What We Sow, about the curse of the coups. Our first coup was in 1987, then in 2000, and then in 2006. Firstly, that is 35 years since our first coup. What do you mean when you speak of the curse of the coups?
Um, well, I'm referring to the fact that, with the curse of the coups, overshadowing our elections, is since 1987, 35 years of coups have infested our otherwise properly democratic operational governments. It's been tainted, not only tainted, but all the tentacles of those who were part of, instigated the coups remain with the country. This is my personal belief. We no longer know right from wrong. I mean, we make excuses for wrong. We become more selfish, self-serving, and it's about self-enrichment. And we've, forfeited some of the very basic, fundamental of life, like, about character, about equality, about all those things. That's all those things now are almost mainstream. Nepotism is no longer considered to be or frowned on. That's it. So I'm bringing my family in. So what? all of this is happening. It's all broken down. There are no procedure. There's no discipline. There's no none of this happening now. And of course, you have to remember accountability, transparency. We don't get any of that. And even though in the Constitution it says that you have a right to access information, you can go on any government website, anyone you want, and ask them questions about you want to have under this section, etc., etc. And the way they deal with it is they just don't deal with it, and that's the reality now. That's our reality. And the point I'm making is that since independence, we have had 6 prime ministers, 4 democratic and 2 coup leaders, and 3 what I call transition PMs, where they serve for a day, 2 days, and 30 days. But that's basically to facilitate the imposition of illegal regimes. That's all it is. And which means, and in terms of the period of time, in 52 years since independence, and that's I'm counting today, all right, we have had 55% of our time since independence, only 55% have been under democratically elected leaders. 47% of the time has been under coup leaders taking control of the country, which means it's the coup leaders, not just the coup leaders, the aiders, the abettors, and the enablers, and all the special interests that feed off that. So, and we prosecute and jail democratically elected PMs. We bar citizens from traveling out or coming back into to Fiji. Perfect example is the recent case of Bridgelal, whose family wanted to bring him here to be buried, and they say no. We're down to that kind of mean-spirited governance. That's what we were now at, and this is from the government level. This is how we treat people now. This is what we've become, and so it's all part of this trickle-down effect that I refer to as the curse of the coups. And then, of course, we can't forget that we jail a politically elected PM on a frivolous account of something he did 19 years ago, as I was just talking before the disruption to our communication. And then we must not forget the citizens, the innocent citizens who were taken into custody, beaten up, killed, and abused.
Yes. Let me then ask you, oh Lord, internet's just gone again on Mick's side. Well, I hope he can come back in. Lord, we've just dropped out. I thought we just got it going again, and Mick just suddenly dropped out. Makes me wonder whether there is indeed a conspiracy theory here. Someone wrote and said that Sashi Singh's talking point, I think our current, with our current interruptions, internet interruptions, I think you should not disclose your guest for upcoming shows. Just a thought. Well, what kind of society are we living in? That's a question. Isa, it's very disconcerting. Mick must be getting absolutely frustrated, but he's back again. Thank you. If we can have that up again. Fingers crossed. We can, fingers crossed. Mick, you just dropped out again. Can you hear me now?
Yes. See, even
right.
I'm suspicious now. This is unusual kind of interference, and I'm looking at this Wi-Fi, and we've got 3 bars, yet we're getting this type of interference. So maybe my
Yeah,
friends
I mean,
don't want me to keep talking the way I am.
Well, some people have been espousing the conspiracy theory that
But I guess where I was
perhaps,
coming,
yeah, well, you were talking about the curse of the coups, which then brings me to my next question. How then do we break the curse of the coups? How does one get back to civilian rule?
through the ballot box.
Okay.
People have to want the change, and they have to go in and make the change. They can't keep, people can't just say, well, because of this person or that person. Every individual must go and make their vote count. And we can't forget this in terms of when we're talking about the curse of the coups. And I'm saying, well, we have to go back to voting, voting for the change. Now, what people should remember is this, that 227,000 people voted for this government. So there's a
Right.
lot of people who support coups. There
That
are a lot of the citizens. We can't just say, we want to get out of this and it's not good, but actually people support them. And of course, it's the very people that we're talking about, the voters, and they are the ones that are suffering, the very people, because they support something on the promise of X, Y, and Z, and then that promise doesn't come. But then because they're so desperate, they're happy for little crumbs they get.
now let's assume that you are confident that by installing a new civilian government without any connections or any coup baggage, that we will finally be free of
Are we gone off
corruption.
again?
I'm on, but hopefully you're back. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. There may be a delay. Mick, can you hear me? Okay. Mick, just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me.
I can hear you, yeah.
All right. Look, I'm going to take you off. We're going to give you a phone call. We'll
I
give you
think
a new set.
yeah.
We'll give you a new set of instructions, and let's follow that. Let's try to overcome this in just a moment or two. I hope you don't mind, Mick. We'll take you off. Log out. We're going to phone you. Okay, you can do that. All right. Well, let's try this one more time. Um, I uh, I sincerely thank all our viewers for still staying tuned. We've got a lot of people tuned in. Let me assure you, I mean, Mick speaks from his heart. He has a lot of passion, and it's very rare for me to get an opportunity to talk to somebody who speaks freely without fear and someone who speaks with conviction. And that is a rare quality one finds in Mr. Mick Beddoes. And I sincerely hope that we can finish our interview. We're just over halfway through, and there's some very interesting topics. And I'm sure people would also want to know whether he is going to contest the elections or not. And that is something that I want to know, and I'm sure you want to know that as well. So stay tuned. I can't play a song or something because, as you know, copyright laws prohibit us from playing songs on Facebook. And if I do that, the Meta people, that's Facebook, they will immediately shut down my program. And even if I sang you a song right now, that would be also subject to copyright. And I don't want to sing a song because you'll all run away. You'll you'll all just go away. So let's not do that. Keep those comments coming. Please keep those likes coming. Some people have sent stars, and I sincerely thank you for that. Um, well, as I said, I mean, I've got the time, I've got the patience, and we shall persevere. And is he going to do that? Yeah. All right. Wonderful. Thank you, team. And so we've got our tech expert on this end. Hopefully, somebody says take a Kit Kat break. Well, if only I could. There's no Kit Kat here, but will have a sip of water. Cheers. And now that I've said cheers, someone will think that it's not water; it's something else. Well, Mick is back. No, it's not really Mick, but we'll see once we see Mick on the seat, and once we've seen him settled in. Hopefully, we shall get things happening. Salotitale Navalevu, thank you so much. Mbale Rarambrus Vinaka Anre Raiwailui, thank you so much as well. Pushpa Kumar. Okay, let's try one more time. Vince, let's try and do this. Okay, Mick, can you hear me?
Yeah. Can
All
you hear
right,
me?
okay. Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. There may be a little delay, but let's keep going.
Okay.
Good. Now, as I was saying, let's assume that you are confident that by installing a new civilian government without any connections or coup baggage, that we will finally be free of the corruption, favoritism, nepotism, greed, self interest, self enrichment, and for the first time, bring back accountable and transparent government. Then my question to you is, what is your view of the military? The military have been involved in one way or another in all the coups we've had in Fiji.
Well, you know, in terms of the military, we have to also remember that what is their role? Well, they up until 1987 have always played a constructive role in Fiji. They've always done that, and it's only since 1987 that they have moved away from their main purpose, which is to protect the interests of the people of Fiji, the country and the people of Fiji. And they have been used to promote individual or self-interest groups, which is the unfortunate part of our military. And basically, we need to sit down with the military and engage directly with the military and talk and convince them that we can't have this carrying on like as it is, and we need to move them back to their constructive role with society. I mean, we talk about the military as a separate thing, but in the reality is that the members who make up the military, the members who make up the police, have families, and they're all part of the population of Fiji. So we should be able to sit down and say, well, hang on, this is not working, this is not good, and we must go back to the way it should be. And we need to have our military as a constructive part of our society, not the destructive role that they have played. We can't continue that. And how do we do that? Well, the way we resolve everything. I mean, world wars have existed. At the end, everybody has to come to the peace table. And it has to be threshed out. And we have to find a new way forward because this way is not good enough. And they all have an oath. And the oath is to defend the people. The people come first in everything. The people must come first. So we need to do that. And another thing I want to make the point of here, we talk about the coups and the curse of the coups and everything else, but right there in the middle of that, and we're talking, you raise the question of the military now, we must not forget those professional military personnel who refused to be part of what happened in 87, 2000, 2006, who forfeited their careers, gave it up to stay true to their oath of office. And we must remember those men and women, because they're the ones that stood their ground and gave up their careers because they did the right thing. And it comes back to what I'm trying to say when I say about coups. We punish the good people, the people who do the right thing. When you want to stand up and do what is right, you get cursed. So that's what I mean by we no longer know what's the difference between right and wrong. But here's the point. All of this comes about through manipulation and persuasion. And I always remember that the only power anybody actually ever has is the power to persuade somebody else or some other group. So we need to sit down with the military and the police, the leadership, and bring into the discussion others as well. But sit down and say, we need a better way of doing this. We don't want any more coups. We don't want to have this military versus us. That is an absurd situation to have, which we have. And that is, they are being paid by the taxes of the very people they're suppressing. That's
Well
what
said.
we have. And that can't continue and must not. And we must rely, and the question can be asked, so what makes you think they want to do it? Well, they are sons and daughters of Fiji, just like we are. So we need to sit down, because what we want to do is talk about Fiji first. Not their interest, not my interest, not anybody else's. Our future generations, our children, our grandchildren. We want to fix what has gone wrong. Because we reward the wrongdoers, our basic fundamentals as a society is wrong. So we need to rebuild our foundation and get it right, and have a Talanoa for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, nonstop if you want, but come to a conclusion that yes, this is the best way forward to everybody. And this is what we should do. And this is how the new Fiji should move ahead. So everybody buys into that plan. And that's the way we go forward. Not have any more nonsense about imposing your will, because then we're going to continue as a dictatorship. And no, as we know, the vast majority of the people are not in favor of this. And I don't understand why any country would want to. So the military has to be a work in progress. We have to sit with the military and we have to talk to them. And we've got to keep talking until we find common ground and have an understanding on how we're going to move things forward. That's what we must do. And when I say military, I also mean the police. And we've got to get the police back to being a professional police force. We can't have the military personnel running the police force. The military is for the military, and the police is another set of rules, because that's administering the actual the law and order situation in the country. So that's how we have to work at it. It's not going to be easy, of course it's not, but we got to start it. We got to do it. That's all.
Well said indeed. And of course, Fiji has its own unique way of sitting down, discussing things. And that's a uniqueness about Fiji, in that stakeholders can come together, sit around and have a bowl of grog, uh, get rid of all the formalities, move forward for the sake of who? For the sake of Fiji, for the
Fiji.
sake of the children of Fiji. And that is something that Fiji is renowned for. And I hope that going forward, the stakeholders do realize that. But sticking with the military, Mick, I don't know what your thoughts are, but let me ask you, what are your thoughts on Section 131, 2 of the Constitution, that states that it shall be the overall responsibility of the Republic of Fiji military forces to ensure at all times the security, defense, and well being of Fiji and all Fijians. Now, is there anything in that that worries you, or it's okay?
No, that should not be there. And the reason it shouldn't be, it's only been put there as their safeguard when they did the 2013 Constitution. So that's like a little stick waving over the people of Fiji. It'll be the military, because they know that the military was with Frank at that time. The military command now is quite a different group to what was there in the past. The point I'm saying is that no, the elected parliament of Fiji is the body, and the military and the police must be subservient to a civilian rule. That's the bottom line. That's the starting point. We can't have this. Now, again, I come back to this provision. This is an arbitrary position that has been installed in an imposed constitution that has yet to be ratified by the people. And the people's constitution draft was trashed and burned because it didn't have the provisions. And the military's role is to defend the country and the people of Fiji. And that's their role. And they must go back to that role. And again, it will take a lot of talking. But if we keep at it and we keep talking, and we have the Telenos system that works very well, you can have disputing families, you can have disputing groups. You sit down and you talk, much like going to counseling. You have issues, you're concerned about something, but when you go to a professional counselor, they bring it all out of you. So you let it all go out and you put everything on the table, and then you look at the way we can work the way through. And that's what simply has to happen. There's no shortcut. We have to go through that process. And I was beginning to say this when we were disrupted. It's much like any conflict, international world wars. At the end, they have to sit around the table. The enemies sit around the table, and they talk their way through, and they agree to a treaty of peace or whatever it is, and then they sign off on it, and that becomes the starting point of the new way forward. And that has to happen if we're going to bring it back, and we have to tackle all of it holistically. We can't just do piecemeal, or we'll do this but leave this way it is. No, we can't do that. And we must get to a point where immunity from prosecution for any future acts of treason will have consequences. And we have to do that, and we have to have a referendum, and we get it out there and get the people to support it, and get the military and the police to all support it, say, yes, this is now the line, this is the red line. From here on in, you answer to the civilian rule. Now, if a military person or a police officer who was involved in one way or another, wants to get involved and go to Parliament, fine. Hang up your hat and your career in the military, and then go into civilian rule and civilian life, and then contest. Yes. And after all, no one can go to the House of Parliament unless the people want them there.
Well said indeed. And I certainly endorse what you say, that moving forward, the law of the land should be that any treasonous acts must be prosecuted. The perpetrators, the conspirators, they must be brought to trial, and they must be tried in a court of law, and adequate punishment should be meted out to those people who take part in treason. Because as we've learned, and as you've alluded to this afternoon, figures released by Mr. Narsi, Wadan Narsi, we had a cost of some $9 billion. And this is no easy money. Mick, moving ahead, I'd love to ask you some questions about the 2022 election projections. You're good at this, you're an old hand, and you're quite experienced. And I love the way you've broken down the figures. So let me explore with you some of the trends that you've written about in terms of the political parties. First of all, let us look at the Fiji First Party, the incumbent. When you look at the votes that Fiji First got in 2014 to the votes that they got in 2018, what sort of projections are we looking at in the general election 22 for Fiji First?
Well, again, I always like to base mine on trends because I look at figures all the time, and their movement is a downward trajectory of 23%. They lost 66,473 votes from 2014 to 2018. Now, you will recall elections were usually held in September, like August and September, I believe. But they deferred it to November, which is like the wet season, because of the royal visit, hoping to get some last minute, popular photographic opportunities. Some that was there because for sure, I know they were looking at this to say, oh, royal family visit, we brought them here, blah blah blah, this that the other, all these photo opportunities, and they know the closeness of the Fijian people to the royal family. But by the results, it backfired because they went down 66,000 votes. Now that's to me a telling trend. So now moving forward, if we can do two things, we can say, well, I put it this way. So what has Fiji First done since falling down to that level in 2018 to redeem themselves, to gain back the momentum and stay on top? And I think they've done worse in this last 4 years. And hardly a day goes by where they're not standing up there bullying and on their bully pulpit and they're gunning for everybody. Look at what they're doing to opposition MPs and how they're using FICAC to go out and silence all their opponents. So they're to me, it's a nervousness on their part because they're pulling out all the stops because they must know what we know, which is their trajectory is going downhill. Now, if we then apply the same drop of 23% in the this election, well, and that's based on, by the way, that was based on the total registered voters that I had listed as at April. This morning I had a look at it, and the difference in voters registered is only 7,405. So as of the 3rd of September, there was 6,899.74 voters. And therefore, it's just a 1% increase from what I talked about before. So for the explanation I'm giving, we can still stay with the same figures. But they will be lucky if we continue with that trajectory. They'll get 174,976 votes if that downward trend of theirs continues. And they haven't done anything that I can see to bring that up or stabilize it. Now, when I did this at the time, 50% of the votes and plus invalids, 582,291 was the voters I said may actually cast their vote. So to win outright, a party must at least secure 291,145 votes. Well, if Fiji First continues on its trajectory, they'll be lucky to get 175,000 votes. It's not enough to win outright.
All right.
Now, even if we say they stabilized their situation, which I can't see because they haven't done that. They're just getting angrier by the day and blaming everybody else about their problem, which is self-inflicted. But even if we gave them the same 227,241 votes they won in 2018, they would still not have enough to get the majority based on the latest registration of voters. They'll still be about 89,000, 90,000 short, even if they stayed steady. But don't forget, we have to look at this in line of their trajectory. And if you will remember back in 2014, around about that time, when elections held, you couldn't hear boo about Fiji First. You couldn't hear a single murmur about any reaction to the good or bad or whatever they did. Good, yes. Bad, no, total silence. Now there's a flood of criticisms.
Yes.
I don't know about others, but certainly people who are supporters of Fiji First, when I go get in a taxi, go to a shop, whatever I'm doing, they actually come up to me and say, can't stand these people. I said, but you voted for that party. I thought they were doing this and that and that. But no, they are the reason we are struggling. That's all I hear. And it's everywhere. Now, and I don't move around so much. And I'm sure people going around talking, they will get that reaction. So unlike 2014, 2018, people are expressing themselves more against Fiji First. They're actually coming out. Not enough, but that's what's happening. So that's what I believe will happen to Fiji First. Now, again, I'm not suggesting anything, but we also have a huge conflict of interest in the management and the correct management of our election. We have the minister responsible for parliament, as well as the minister responsible for elections, is the general secretary of the Fiji First Party, a competing political party in it. So there's a vested interest in this. I'm not suggesting that they will play fiddlies with the election at all. But what we cannot dispel is the fact that if you know you're flying into a brick wall, the tendency is to find a way to avoid it and fly out. So who knows what that will entail? And basically, that's what we're up against. And there's too much of a conflict in there of interest. And yet, this is part of what I'm saying, where we no longer know the difference between right or wrong. And that's what we got to be concerned about. So that's my take on how Fiji First will feature. I do not believe they will make it. And even in the 2018 election, the only reason they got through was because of the 12,000 spoiled votes from opposition parties who didn't make the threshold, which is then divided by the successful parties in. So they got their share, they pushed them over the line.
Yes,
Keeps coming back to
50.0.
my point about opposition parties, which I've been trying for years to get together, finally
we'll come to that. We'll come to the opposition. We'll come to the opposition parties. We will come to the opposition parties.
50.0 is like you just scraping over the. Okay.
Yep. All right. Let us look at SODELPA. You've analyzed Fiji First Party. Let us look at SODELPA briefly. Their vote numbers from 2014.
So do you want me to go through the next one?
I beg your pardon? Look at SODELPA. Their vote numbers from 2014 increased in 2018. You may have the numbers or the percentages of that increase. Now, based on that increase...
Yeah, no, I'm listening.
Yeah, based on that increase, if things were normal for SODELPA, one would expect an increase in votes. However, things are far from normal. What can you say about the projections for SODELPA?
Well, in that article I posted, that was an upward trajectory in Sadalpa's case. And the increase was 41,215 votes, 29%. So if we assume that positive trend continued into 2020 and they remained a single unit, then they would be able, they can be assured of getting about 234,000 votes. And but this will still be 83,210 votes short of an absolute majority. It will still be short. Okay. Now, that is what would have happened to Sadalpa. But as we all know, Mr. Rambuka quit the party and left the party and started People's Alliance Party. Okay, so that's history now. That's the way. And then, of course, now all the pundits are saying, okay, well, he'll take the lion's share and he'll get this and he'll get that. Well, again, I don't know where they'll get their information from. I just stick with the facts that are there to follow. And basically, even if, will Sadalpa retain the majority, or will Rambuka, new PAP, get its share? Now, the fact remains that it doesn't matter when we're talking about who can win and who will lose. Well, you can either split it up 50-50, the Sadalpa vote 50-50, and that's it. So they're both starting with that number, and then who knows who will do better than who's going to do the better job and get the support base. But if you split it 50-50, then that means each of the parties will get 116,000 votes, roughly 117,000 votes, right? If you split that up. And if we assume one party secures 60% and the other is 40%, then that still means one party will get 140,000 votes while the other get 93,000 votes. And either way, both parties will fall short of the 316,713 votes needed for an outright win. Okay. So even that's the other scenario. If we go on to the NFP went from 27,066 votes in 2014 to 33,515 votes in 2018. That's an increase of 6,449 votes, or 24%. Now, NFP has performed well over the past 5 years. So if we continue with their 24% upward trajectory, then for 2022, they should get an additional 8,044 votes, taking them up to 41,559. But they will be well short of an outright win. But even if we double the NFP votes and took it up to 83,118, right? They will still be 233,675 votes short of an outright win. So they still won't make that. And then if you combine the PAP, NFP, if we assume the PAP secures 60% of the Sadalpa support, which is 140,000, add the NFP's likely 41,559 votes for 2020. So that's a combined support of 181,708 votes. Still 135 votes short of an outright win. And even if we double the NFP's vote increase to the 83,000 and combined it well, that'd still be 223,267, which is 93,000 votes short. So my point is that it looks more likely that there will be no outright winner in this election. The indications are there that it is unlikely. Now, with regards to the Labour Party, 2014, they had 11,670 votes. They lost 76% of those votes and dropped to 8,870. Or they lost 8,870. Their vote in 2018 was 2,800. Now, many commentators, I wouldn't say many, commentators are suggesting that this will be the end of the Fiji Labour Party. Well, I just want to remind those commentators that they are signaling the end of the Labour Party. But the other variable in this factor is the Mahen factor. Okay? In 1999, the Fiji Labour Party, when they won, he had secured 461,056 votes. Just as in 1982, NFP secured 403,548 votes. So they both have the potential to make significant gains. That's all I'm saying. And in politics, it is the art of the possible. And so they still are both the same. And I know Mr. Chaudhry, I know Mahen very well. And I know him well enough to know not to write him off so easily. And so, well, other one is Unity Fiji, the party I am a member of. Well, they're the new kid on the block, started in 2018. They had a short run-up time to the 2018 elections. And they got 6,449 votes. Now, there's nothing to measure them against. So what I did was, for my paper, I said, well, we measure against the gains of NFP, because the NFP is a long-standing political party, right from independence, okay, and before that. So in their 4 years, they increased their vote by 6,449. And therefore, Unity's 6,896 was 70% greater for their first run when you measure it against a well-established party like the NFP's, the difference in a 4-year window of being in parliament and actively engaged in politics. So from that, I'm saying that the trajectory for Unity is going north. Now, how far north it goes, well, that's what we're going to find out in election time. But I'm pretty confident. Now, there's been other people asking me, well, you guys won't even make the threshold. Well, nobody knows that. Nobody actually knows that. And what we're going to find out is on that day. Now, the question is, do I think Unity this time around will make the threshold? Yes, I do.
All right. Talking
now,
about...
I don't know if Generation Party. Sorry.
Talking about the Unity Fiji Party, you wrote in your opinion piece, separating the rhetoric from the facts. You wrote that Savinathan Narumbe is Fiji's best chance at cutting the 35-year-old umbilical cord to the coups and all the excessive baggage it has dumped on the Fijian people, and moving the country back to accountable and transparent civilian rule. What did you base this opinion on?
Well, Sabin Narumbe, as far as I'm concerned, is a good man, a good person, and he's a very quietly he's well what shall I say, qualified in terms of his own career, personal career, and as it turns out, he happens to be the former governor of the Reserve Bank and been in finance. He's worked in the World Bank. He's worked in the International Monetary Authority. He's been a financial consultant for the region in the Pacific. And I think he still is. I'm not sure whether that's finished now, but been one of the advisors for the Australian government in terms of matters pertaining to finance here. And the biggest problem, the biggest issue we are going to confront after this election is finance and the ability to manage that situation. We don't have to look far. We can just look at Sri Lanka and see how far off the rails they've gone, right? And the situation with the Ukraine war and the impact that's having on all the other side things of freighting, transportation, availability of commodities and goods. We need somebody with a steady, calm hand on the wheel in the new Fiji going forward. And a man like Savin Narumbe is the kind of person I think that Fiji needs to steer it through the rough seas that we're facing and take it to calmer waters. And he needs to be obviously supported by good people who can help him deliver on that task. And so we need his kind of expertise. This happens to be the time we need it most of all. And that's why I believe that Save is the right choice for us for Prime Minister. And I think he will do a very good job if given the opportunity.
I'll come back to the topic of the formation of the next government in a short while. However, as we head for the home stretch, Mick, let me ask you for your assessment, first of all, of the incumbent government. What do you think of the performance of the Fiji First government for the last 16 years?
Selfish, self-enriching, self-absorbed. That's it.
Now, do you think the Fiji First government could have done things differently that would have been for the betterment of the nation? For instance, adopting a more consultative process. I'm not trying to put words into your mouth. Let me hear it from you. What are your thoughts?
Well, again, unfortunately, we have to go back to the starting line. And I keep saying, when you steal a government and put yourself in there, then you don't respect the rules, the norms. You just know how to bully your way through and get what you want done. And basically, could they have done? Of course they could. Did they have the opportunity to? Yes, they had. They had 15 years in which to turn things around. But what did they do in that 15 years? 2007, their first year, they started to impose 17 decrees against our indigenous people. So they started to stamp on the very people, our indigenous community. And they put down over 17 decrees between 2007 and 2013. And there are many decrees, including the removal of the Great Council of Chiefs and all those other things. But I had said the other week is that the nastiest one that I know is that they even had a decree that prohibited educated indigenous Fijians from participating in affairs of their provinces. Yes. I mean, they had the opportunity, but they chose not to do this. This is not some accident. And if you look at my other posts, which I have been doing now since 2017, they not only did that, they disenfranchised. They deliberately made appointments to boards that disenfranchise our indigenous people to such an outrageous extent. I mean, chairmanships of all the government entities as early as September, latest as September the 12th, 18% indigenous Fijians, and they're 62% of the population, 82% minorities. I mean, the board membership, 26% indigenous Fijians, 69% minorities, including Rutumans, and 5% expatriates. And it's a deliberate effort by this government to disenfranchise our indigenous people. So that's why when you ask me the question about do I think they could have, of course they could have taken a different route. In the parliament today, have you ever seen them work together, even in a crisis, starting from Winston? No, no. Because from their eyes, if we bring the opposition in to work with them, because we all represent the people, that means they'll be in our photos when we're handing out aid given by another country to the people, so that they think that we're the great ones that are giving them the aid. It has been they have been totally self-absorbed. They promote themselves, and I mean, it's embarrassing actually what they do. But it
Or
has real live consequences to the people.
remind me, who is the Minister for Indigenous Affairs, for Fijian Affairs?
The prime minister.
And why would he be party to something that does not serve the interest of the indigenous community? That sounds absolutely strange.
Yes, you would think so, wouldn't you? And then
Absolutely.
that comes back to my original comment. We've become they've created a dysfunctional society where we don't know the difference between right and wrong.
Mick, there are some who say that should the Fiji First Party form the next government, that the Prime Minister, Vorenge, will hand over his role as Prime Minister to the Attorney General midway through the term. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Not really. I don't have any real thoughts on that, other than if that's what the prime minister is going to do, then obviously, if that were the case, and the prime minister is going around getting people to support him, again, it's being disingenuous. You should tell them, I don't intend to stay for the full term. I'll drop out halfway and give it in. But that's for them to inform the people. But either way, he hands it to Kayum. Well, for me, I always say the real prime minister is Kayum, not Frank. Frank's the figurehead PM, but the person that calls the shot, everybody knows, is Kayum.
All right, now I'd like to talk about Mr. Mick Beddoes. I'd like to talk about you. Uh, now, Mick, during the good old days of politics in Fiji, we used to have the very reliable, the Tabit Times poll. I know you remember that. Now, I note that during one of the Tabit Times polls, when you were the opposition leader, you enjoyed the highest performance approval of the three leaders. Your approval rating was 53%, compared with 47% for the then Prime Minister Laisen Yangarase and leader of the Fiji Labour Party, Mr. Mahendra Chaudhry, at 39%. My question is, what did you attribute your popularity to with such a high performance rating then?
Well, actually, the number one thing I believe was the fact that almost immediately after I got elected, and after my first week of orientation in Parliament to enter Parliament, I started traveling back around the country to visit everybody, as I promised, because one of the biggest complaints they had back then, they've had for years that I know of, ever since I've been in politics, is that when the candidate goes around and asks people for support, and they all complain when we vote for them, they don't come back. So I made it a point. I said, well, it's not going to happen on my watch. And almost the first week after I got elected, I started to travel around the country. And initially, I had no attendance because they couldn't understand, what I was doing there. And I said, well, I told you I'm coming back. So I've been voted in. Thank you for your support. I'm now a member of parliament. I'm your rep. So I'm going to I put ads in the papers and on the radio and I turn up at a certain location, and I give it an hour. And if they all turn up, and I'll talk to them. And the only reason I wanted to go there and do that is to get them to tell me what are the issues, what's going on with them now. I'd record it, and then I'd go down to the next meeting and the next meeting. And it went all the way around BT 111, plus at least 2-3 trips to Rotuma as well. But then I'd take this information, come back to my office in Parliament, and my staff would go through, do the research, get all the details, tell me what we need to do, what was the response from the responsible ministries, and then I'd make appointments to see the ministers. And I go and sit down with them and talk about the issue and make a plan to go with the minister to that spot, get that problem fixed, and carry on. And I explained to them that I'm not interested in the kudos. I'm not interested in somebody thinking, no. I told you, you're the minister, you're going to get the credit. And that's okay with me. Just fix the problem. And this was very successful. Now, there were some ministers who were not that cooperative, but my PA had a standing routine, and all of them knew, they got to know. So I asked the question, we give them the information. If they don't respond in 4 days, she has to file it as a question in Parliament, and I'll get into that house, ask that question. And as you know, with questions, it's not the question, it's a supplementary question. And I would hand out some supplementary points to other colleagues on the opposition bench, and we'd fire the harpoons at the minister, because they haven't done their job probably, but 99% of the time it ended up being successful. So that's one reason. And the other one was, I think it was Opa Swan and I, we in the beginning, we invited the media. The first thing I did was invite all the media to Parliament and hosted them a function at the Speaker's Lounge and Restaurant. Now, they thought that we were going to make some big announcement or whatever, but we got the media there, and they were surprised that we had drinks and a kana for them. And I basically explained to them, listen, there's only 2 of us technically in the opposition. It's an absurd situation, but it's only 2 of us. And there's 40 people on the other side of government, or whatever the number was at that time. So, and there's X number of people in the cabinet. So there's about, 20 cabinet ministers, and there's 1 opposition leader. And at the time, Labour was negotiating to become part of the government anyway. And so I said, so therefore, we can get drowned with all the stuff that the ministers are doing. And I asked them, all we want is a fair go. We want to issue statements, give it to you, and we will give you the information. And if you call me anytime, 24/7, I will never say no comment. If I don't know the issue, I will respond accordingly and say, look, I'm not aware of it, but I'll research it and I'll get back to you. But just give us decent airtime. And I have to say this, that they did. They responded. And so I had a very good, favorable, media.
Good rapport with the media.
Yeah, I mean, forgot the word there, but yeah, you're right. And so everything I was saying went out. And if there's any question they ask me, I'd give a response. So obviously, part of my response will be in part of the news item. And in those days, you get a reaction. So in other words, if a minister said X, I'd have my comment, it would go in the same article. And therefore, there was a balance in what people were receiving. So those are I think, the two reasons that gave me a pretty high profile. And of course, when I start talking, sometimes I can't stop, and basically that's it. You have to just keep belting it home, and I think that's where I got the reaction came from, because when I got the results of those polls, I didn't know there was even a poll done, but I was told that it happened, and I did okay. So,
all right, well done. Now, do you not think that the Unity Fiji Party needs a person with your charisma, with your wide appeal across all segments of the community, to be standing for elections? Will you be standing for the next elections, please tell us that you'll be contesting the elections.
What I can tell you today is that I've actually formally applied to be a candidate today.
You have formally
I was
applied?
not intending to stand at all, but there are so many things that are going wrong and not right. And, at the end of the day, I have formally applied to be a candidate. So I don't know whether if I'm accepted, then I will be a candidate. If not, then I'm not going to be, and I'm okay with that. But I have submitted my formal application to be considered to be a candidate for this election. And the number one reason is I can't stay on the sideline anymore as much as that's what I wanted to do, because I know that I might be able to help and make a difference. And I want to do as much as I can to make sure my children, my grandchildren, my great grandchildren get to enjoy a Fiji that I grew up in, that was, the way the world should be.
Is this where you've just made that big revelation? Is this the first time you've spoken about it in public, that you have applied to be a candidate?
Did you get that?
Yes, I got that. My question was, is this the first place where you've announced that you are applying to be a candidate for the 2022 general elections? Or have you already given that to the media in Fiji?
Other than my wife, my children, yes, 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 yes.
All right. Well, so you were
No,
saying,
no
other than
media
your,
knows
yeah.
of this. This is the first time I'm mentioning it, and I even haven't been able to, I didn't want to have any special treatment or any of that. So I applied directly to the head office at Unity with my application and details. And that's it. I have not consulted with Sabin Narube or anybody else.
All right. Well, congratulations, Mick. Well done,
Yes,
because
this is the first time I'm making it public.
congratulations, Mick. What a revelation on SSTP, and congratulations, because a person of your caliber is needed in the halls of power to ensure that people not only talk the talk, but they walk the walk, and that things are transparent, and that things are accountable, and that corruption, nepotism, self enrichment, all the evils of society are kept in check. So well done. And Fiji media, I know you listen. There's your headlines for tomorrow. Mick Beddoes has put up his hand for elections. Congratulations once again, Mick. Wonderfully said and revealed on SSTP. Folks who are still with us, I believe, you should share mixed news with likes and all emojis that you can share at this stage. So let's have your emojis coming. Now, in the SSTP poster trailer, your speech bubble said, and I quote, "With eyes wide open, they perpetuate the spin, pretending all's well in our democracy of sin. It's time to break the shackles and set ourselves free." Let us just look at that first part of that line, just for clarification. Who is the they that you talk about? They perpetuate the spin, they pretend.
The government.
All right. There seems to be a big delay, but I'm glad you spoke up there. Now, what do you mean by our democracy of sin?
Did you get that? I said they are the government. I'm referring to the government.
Yeah, I got that. So the next part of my question was, what do you mean by our democracy of sin?
What I mean is basically it's a facade. We aren't really a democracy.
All right. Would you like to elaborate on that facade?
Okay, I started to, the delay is quite long, so
Hmm.
I've already started to answer that. But by that I mean, like, we are not a democracy. It's a farce. It's a bit of a farce, and the reason for that is that the way that Parliament operates, the way that the government conducts itself, the way that the um, okay, I'll wait till you hear this and then I'll start again. Yeah. So the facade is the fact that we pretend that everything is well, and we act like we got a democracy, but we don't. It's not a democracy because people who want to say something, their right to free speech, their right to say what they want, is being monitored and checked. There is no free speech. There is no accountability. I mean, that's what I'm trying to say is the problem. So it's a nonsense. They are pretending that we have a democracy when their own actions tell the world or tell us that it isn't a democracy. We continue to be in a parliamentary dictatorship. That's what's happening here. And if anybody thinks that somehow this is a democracy, well, they obviously come from another planet. Definitely not the one we're in.
And is that why you say that we have really been in shackles because we are in a sort of a dictatorship? I hope you got that. Is that why you say that we've been in shackles because of that dictatorship style of government? Hmm. All right. Well, I think, Mick, we'll just have to finalize our interview. I had about another 5, 6 questions. Um, can you just give me a thumbs up if you
Yes,
can hear me? All right.
and
Okay.
and because that's consider this: they have 17 decrees imposed on 62% of the population. 17 decrees, 62% of the population. So they're in their hands are in shackles. We dictate to them. We control what they can or can't ask for their assets.
All right. Few more questions. What are your views with regards to the
Yes,
spate
and
of
I've
complaints?
elaborated a little further there. Unfortunately, this delay is
Mm.
you're getting what I'm saying quite a little later than when I've said it. So, but essentially, that's what it is, and we have to set ourselves free.
All right. What are your views with regards to the spate of complaints being referred to the supervisor of elections? Did you get that? Your views on the spate of complaints being referred to the supervisor of elections?
Sorry?
Your views on the spate of complaints being referred to the supervisor of elections? All right. Well, we seem to have a dropout again, and it's very unfortunate. I had maybe 5 more questions of quite serious intent to discuss with Mick. We'll give Mick about 30 seconds, see if he can come back. Otherwise, unfortunately, I'll have to wrap up today's program. It just does not make sense with all the interference we've had with the internet today. Um, the internet connectivity obviously was not at its best. I thank all the viewers who are still with us. And, well, one big revelation today, as you've heard, Mick Beddoes has announced that he has today formally applied to be a candidate for the Unity Fiji Party, of which he is a member. And that is absolutely interesting news. And that's a revelation that he made on SSTP. As he said, he discussed it only with his wife and family. Mick, I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
All right, we've got just about a handful of questions, and I'll try to be very, very brief so we can reach the end of the program. What are your views with regards to the spate of complaints being referred to the supervisor of elections? The Fiji First Party filed a 19-page complaint. Your views, please.
Well, it's all part of the intimidation. It's all part of the intimidation. It's all part of the abuse of power that they have, and that's all there is to it. You will notice that any complaints about Fiji First don't see the light of day, but everybody else goes through the mill and face prosecution, go thrown in jail, etc. So this is all part of the clear abuse of power and an attempt to intimidate anyone who has anything to say about these guys.
Has Fijian politics got to such a stage where one political party, under the guise of a mitigation package, can distribute millions of dollars, and report states that so far $57 million has been paid, while the opposition parties have to produce a receipt for even a roti parcel that is sold? Is there any need for alarm, or is this how the cookie crumbles in Fiji now?
Again, I keep coming back to the same response that I have. Nobody in Fiji should be surprised because these governments, the origins of this government is treason. And people who commit treason have a certain characteristic. And it's called a dictatorship. And a dictator doesn't worry about the rules. The dictator creates the rules as they go. So, and we already have an enshrined immunity from prosecution. So there's 2 sets of laws, one that applies to everybody else, and the other one is to the elite group who benefit from it. And never mind about the $9 billion loss that the people have incurred. So, again, it does not surprise me. This is they're being true to their their modus operandi, which is control.
Do you think that there is any reason to doubt whether the elections will be free, fair, and credible?
Well, I would say this, that this government, the way they've been behaving in recent months, is showing a level of desperation that has not been there in 2018 or 2014. So they're becoming a lot more creative, or they're being true to form, really. And therefore you have to think about the election, and the only way they're going to be able to win is if they interfere in some way to it. And that's why I'm telling everyone that I talk to regarding elections is to the people should keep your eyes, be aware of your surroundings, keep your eyes open, your ears open, and you've all got smartphones. Record everything that you can that you see is odd and suspicious. Don't even decide that it's not an important thing. Let somebody else decide that and share it, because that's what's going to happen.
Now, Mick, post elections, with the figures that you've analyzed, it seems that no one party will have a clear majority. So, post elections, should no one party have an absolute majority, will the Unity Fiji Party, supposing that they do cross the threshold, will they be prepared to join forces, say, with the People's Alliance and the National Federation Party to form the next government?
Uh, I, First of all, I don't hold any position in Unity Party, so therefore I can't speak for the party. But that will be a matter that the party leadership will have to consider after the elections. And as I hold my own strong views about certain matters that may be called into play or question at the time, then I can tell you right now that I will honor the fact that if the majority believe that that's the best way to go, then my views are not that important in the scheme of things. It's what's in the best interest of the people of Fiji that we need to uh, make those decisions when the time comes. But certainly, I would have to think twice about my position if that grouping included Fiji First.
All right, and now that you've announced your application as a candidate for your party, what is the Mick Beddoes message to the public of Fiji?
My message is this: if you are not happy with what is happening in your life today, if you are struggling every day to try and feed your family, if you are facing hardship, if you're part of the 258,053 people living in absolute poverty, or you don't have the right type of home and you're not happy, then please do not throw away the power that you have. And the power you have, your one vote, can make the difference between change or you getting more of the same that you've had for the last 15 years. And just like anything else, if you're wearing clothing for 10 years, I think when you go past 15, you need to change the clothing that you're wearing and get something new and fresh. And so you can feel better. And it's time for this government to be changed. They've had 15 years, and all they've succeeded in doing is making a whole lot of people poor and running the country up to debt and making sure that they all benefited financially at your expense. So think about your children, think about your grandchildren, think about your family, and on election day, get into that booth, do the right thing, vote this government out.
Now, Mick, in conclusion, do you have any remarks or comments on the SSTP interview that you've taken part in last week and today?
Well, yes, it's been fantastic. Thank you, Sashi, and I thank you for the opportunity that you've given me to be here and to highlight and talk about the various things that I've been writing about. Certainly, the fact that I'm able to in a live broadcast be able to expand on some of these issues. I hope and I think that it'll open up the minds and the eyes of people to realize that things aren't as rosy now. Having and again, it's not just you have to highlight the problem to be able to find the solution to that, and your program allows people like myself to be able to do that. And like I say, the future direction that we will go depends on the voters and how they cast their vote. And they can vote for the same or vote for change. And I'm hoping everybody will vote for change. And I thank you for giving me that opportunity.
Mick Beddoes, a big Vinaka Vakalevu to you. Dhanyavad. And thank you very much for being chief guest in episode 36 and episode 37 of Sashi Singh's Talking Point. It has been an absolute pleasure to have you as chief guest. I thank you for discussing with me matters of national importance, and I hope our viewers found it interesting. But most of all, I sincerely thank you for declaring your candidature for your party. Thank you and congratulations for that. SSTP wishes you all the very best. And in saying that, let me extend an open invitation to your party leader to come on Sashi Singh's Talking Point whenever he so chooses. And if he wants to propose a provisional candidate in the future, let me know and I'll try and accommodate that as well for the Unity Fiji Party. Mick, congratulations. Thank you once again, and God bless. All right, well, we seem to have lost contact there, and we will say goodbye to
Are we
Mr. Mick.
offline or?
No, we're still on. You can have the last word. Okay.
No. I'm just saying. I just want to know whether we're online or offline. So thank you.
No, we're on. Okay. All right. Well, thank you once again to Mr. Mick Beddoes. More Mick. Thank you very much. And before you leave, let me remind you that I will shortly announce our next guest for next week. And I've noticed one or two people have written that I should invite someone from the government side. Once again, let me tell you that the invitation is long-standing. It's been open. I have invited members of the government. They're free to contact me at any time if they want to take part in this program, as long as they're prepared to answer questions on SSTP. I thank all of you for taking your valuable time to provide your positive feedback with regards to the program. SSTP, where we ask the questions that Fijians all over the world want answers to. Fijians want to know, as I say. That's it for episode 37. A big thank you to my regular contributor, Nikhil Singh, for his input in the program today with regards to the news. To my SSTP team, I would like to say thank you to them as well. And to you, all our viewers, wonderful of you to join in again to watch this program. Now, let me reveal the name of our chief guest for the next episode. My chief guest next Sunday is an academic. I first met him in the mid-1980s when he was a teacher at the Suva Grammar School. He is someone who speaks with a lot of authority when it comes to politics, social issues, etc. Have a guess? Let's see if you can quickly write down who my next guest is. My next guest is a gentleman and a scholar. Ladies and gentlemen, my chief guest for next Sunday will be. Yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen, my chief guest for next Sunday will be distinguished Professor Stephen Ratuva, Director, Macmillan Brown Centre for Pacific Studies, Fellow, Royal Society of New Zealand, Te Aparangi, University of Canterbury. I'm really looking forward to a robust and enlightening interview with Professor Stephen Ratuva. I hope you can join us for episode 38 next Sunday. And yes, a few people, yes, one. Ivivi Viri Kiwai, Mr. Steve Ratuva. Well, indeed. Well done. Nice guess. Well, I hope you can join us for episode 38 next Sunday. Now, please note, as I alluded to earlier, next Sunday sees the start of daylight saving time in New South Wales, where this program originates from. Therefore, there will be a change in time when the program will begin in your part of town. So, to the best of my knowledge and belief, Sydney time will be at 11 a.m. It'll be 12 noon in Fiji, 1 p.m. in New Zealand, and I think 5 p.m. in Los Angeles and San Francisco. So check your local times and align it with the SSTP time. And if you follow and like the SSTP page, you will receive instant notification as soon as we go on air. So remember, those are the new times. Don't be late, or else you'll need a doctor's note next time. So until the next episode, I wish you all a very safe and happy week. And in closing, I leave you with this quote from Samuel Adams. Samuel Adams wrote, "It does not take a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority keen on setting bushfires of freedom in the minds of men. It does not take a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority keen on setting bushfires of freedom in the minds of men." That quote from Samuel Adams. Well, that's it for episode 37 of Sashi Singh's Talking Point. Till the next program, I am Sashi Singh, bidding you goodbye, namaste, and ni samode. Goodbye, world.